We're going to bring over Volant in just a minute as soon as he unmutes and says hello. Let me get that we live.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
What's up?
How's it going? How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. How about yourself?
Awesome. I'm doing pretty good. I'm just gonna hop over here to our new little layout. I want to hide the sub goal. Boop. Okay. I need to figure out where to put the chat right now because I didn't think about that at first. I know. So let's put the chat right here, right behind you. Awesome. So, Volant, welcome to the stream.
Hello.
Awesome. So it's been a minute since I've done one of these streams, so we might be breaking format a little bit as we get back into things. But why don't you introduce yourself to the handful of people who might not be familiar with you? Because most people in here, I think, know who you are, but just to be safe for those who might be hearing of you for the first time, why don't you give them the Volant pitch?
Ah. Yeah. Hello. So first of all, thanks a lot for having me, Musar. It's awesome to be here.
Absolutely.
So my name is Volant. I've been producing for about 5 or 6 years, something like that. A little bit more maybe. I make a lot of retro electronic kind of music. I had my start producing music, trance music, sort of things. And then eventually made it onto a label called Monster Cat, which enabled me to, monetize my music. So I kept doing it, and eventually it kind of developed into a more professional thing. So yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very happy about that. Like, they kind of helped me on the way, and it was very nice of them. Um, yeah,
Well, where
I'm
are
not
you?
very good at these things, like introducing myself.
No, you're
So I'm
fine.
sorry.
You're fine. I have questions that'll help the process go over.
Okay.
That's why what I mean by breaking format a little bit because I had to actually go dig up the questions.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us, I guess, where you're from and like a little bit about your background. Like, how did you get into music?
Sure. Wait. I got a question.
Yep.
I'm trying to open Twitch chat on my phone so I can see what's going on, but I can only do it by opening your stream, right?
Yes. Yes.
Dang.
From the Netherlands. Okay. Well, I mean, I was going to let Volant just do the whole, when I was a young boy, my father took me into the city to see a marching band. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, I'm not from the Netherlands. I'm actually from Austria. I just started learning Dutch a while ago, so we speak a lot of Dutch in my stream, and so I guess that's how that came up. But
Oh,
yeah,
for
I'm
sure.
actually not from the Netherlands. I grew up in Austria, and I guess the way I got into music was just I always loved messing around with any kind of editor on my computer. So there was any kind of editor I could find in any video game, I would be messing around with it, always creative with it. And then one day I found FL Studio, and it was just like, whoa, I can make music on a computer. That's insane. So I just spent every single day on there, and yeah, it became an obsession really quickly.
Oh, cool. How long have
So,
you been making music?
well, I guess I bought FL Studio in 2011, and since then I've been making trance music, but I was messing around with the demo way before that, so I'm not sure wherever you want to put it. I guess about 7, 8 years, something like that.
Nice. That's pretty good. I dig that. So one thing I'm curious about because I was expecting you to have like a background like playing a lot of instruments growing up. Did you play like guitar or piano or anything or?
Oh yeah, I had like flute class and piano class for a while, but I always didn't like the practicing. Like I would just kind of practice the bare minimum. So eventually everybody gave up and was like, okay, if you don't want to do this, then don't do it. And when I started making music myself, I was like, okay, I can do whatever I want now, so better make it count. Yeah.
I
So
dig that.
got
Nice.
a lot serious then.
That's awesome. Well, I guess With that in mind, I guess it's a good place to start talking about, your influences and stuff. So, like, what music did your parents listen to, and what music did you listen to while you were growing up? Did that have any impact on the kind of music you make now, or was there like some big turning point?
Oh yeah, it had a huge impact.
Nice.
So this is kind of a tricky question for me always because I wasn't really able to access a lot of music myself when I was younger for various reasons. Like I just didn't have access to anything.
Mhm.
So I've kind of been detached from the pop culture that was like going on at the time, like between 2004, 2010 or something. Didn't really get much of that. But I
Mhm.
always, we had like this radio with it was just playing old music basically, all like 80s, 70s, 90s music. And
Okay.
I guess when you hear that every single day, it kind of influences what you think a song should sound like. And that's why I'm probably producing all this 80s stuff. But yeah, my dad, he's like a huge Pink Floyd fan and
Nice.
Jean-Michel Jarre and Kraftwerk, Kraftwerk, whatever you want to call
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah.
All these like old electronic things. Also Mike Oldfield and well, yeah, all this. I'm not sure what to call it. It's just I call it my dad's music. I'm not sure
Yeah,
what
yeah,
genre
yeah.
it
Like
is.
early electronica or
Uh huh.
whatever, and a lot of like psychedelic or alternative kind of rock stuff, it sounds like, which, that's awesome. Like I can hear that in your music, like just super clearly, which is fascinating. But you said you started making trance. Were you making like lo-fi trance, or were you making like Armin van Buuren, Tiesto kind of shit?
Mm. Yeah. So I guess what happened was when you start with FL Studio, you don't really know what to do. So you search for like FL Studio tutorial. And then I found a tutorial for Dead Mouse Progressive House, is what it was called. Yeah. So
Okay.
I just spent all my time making these plucky trance kind of songs. And after you do it like 100 times, you get tired of it and you do something else. So
I
that's
dig
why.
it. No, that's really interesting. Like, would you say like that there's still a little bit of that in your songwriting now, or would you say that like there were major drastic shifts in terms of like how you evolved from when you first started producing to now?
Well, definitely a lot of it is left in my music because one thing with the progressive and trance kind of thing that happens is you focus on really long chord progressions and like multiple elements going on top of each other, and you don't often have like a super strong lead melody. And that still kind of, happens to me where I make a song that basically has no lead, and people are like, well, sounds like background music. Like that was the main complaint about my music, that it sounds like elevator music. I think I've rectified that a little bit, but yeah, it definitely still impacts me now. I still, have these long chord progressions that just loop around forever.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, like I mean, I also came from a trance background. I remember
Mm.
the first time I really started discovering electronic music was about the same time, about 7 or 8 years ago, and I found this Canadian DJ called Da Bears, and he had a bunch of trance mixes, and I listened to nothing but trance for like a year and a half. So a lot of my early music is also trance, which is interesting, like because it's the same sort of thing. And with that, I'm kind of curious, like looking at my old music, I can see like a an evolutionary step between the music that I make now and then, but there's also like huge leaps in changes in sound. Is like I started off with trance, and then I leapt into like dubstep for a while, and then like all my music was all bass heavy stuff, and now I've kind of come into a different way of thinking about all the types of music that I make. Did you find something similar, or is there sort of like a slow, continuous refinement into the Volant music that we hear now?
Well, it's actually kind of funny because yeah, I was making trance and then I just switched over to dubstep, like exactly like you. So I guess for me was I was tired of making quote unquote background music, is what people called it. So I just wanted to make something that's super overdone and crazy and dubstep and whatever.
Mhm.
So I was doing a lot of stuff that sounds really similar to this artist called AU5.
Oh yeah,
Might be someone you know.
oh yeah,
Um,
Austin.
yeah, because I had like the perfect palette for that, because from all the trance production I was able to really make these crazy kicks and whatever. So that definitely, well, I've definitely jumped from one thing to another there, but what happened to me over the past 3 or 4 years is that I've tried to like collect everything together into one place and then figure out what I want to do with these skills. So like
For
I've
sure.
started over with the music, but I kept all the techniques.
Oh, that's a nice way to think about it. Like you're taking all the skills and just trying to like reinvent yourself sonically, so to speak.
So
So
like
yeah,
I
go for it.
also learned how to make these kicks that were just way too big and never sound good. Like that's what I call them for myself. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
make these kicks, they're just well, way too big. And that's kind of also how I like nowadays I take that and I do the opposite of what I used to do. So it's kind of like I learned how to make big kicks and now I use that knowledge to avoid them. But they're
Oh.
still pretty overdone when I do them.
Hey, sometimes when you figure out something that sounds cool, even if it doesn't work, you keep pulling yourself back to it. That's like me with bass growls. But
Oh yeah.
everyone has their thing. So does that mean that the current sound, because you put out 2 albums this year, one of which just came out, if you want to talk about that a little bit, but are those 2 previous projects like a huge departure for you, or is this like you're finally hitting the music that you want to make?
Well, I think I was I'm not really sure. Like I think it's kind of what I want to do in the sense of like you said it reminds you of like older electronica and I
Hmm.
was always inspired by that and wanted to make something that would remind people of that. So for me that's exactly what I want to do now. Um
Oh, for
yeah,
sure.
I would say it's way closer to what I want to do.
I
Yeah.
dig it. I dig it. Well, what are you working on right now? Like as I just mentioned, like you just released an album called Two,
Mhm.
not even like 3 weeks ago, not even. That is amazing. We were listening to a little bit during the pre-stream.
Thank you.
But what else is going on? Is there anything coming in the next, let's say, like 2 to 3 months that we might be able to look forward to?
Yeah, so the way I work on my projects is I always make a lot of tunes. Like every week I'll have a new tune, and then after like 3 or 4 months, I try to collect the best stuff together and mix it and release it, maybe in an album or like an EP. So right now I'm just making tracks, but I'm also doing a bunch of remixes. Um, I'm not really sure. I think I'm not supposed to talk about it, but yeah, there will definitely be some content whether it's a remix or if I'm releasing another record, we'll see. But I'm
Yeah.
working hard on it. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. That's sick. Cool. Well, before we really get into the main part of this, I do want to talk a little bit more about like, your background.
Sure.
So I've noticed you on Twitch for a while. Have you been streaming on Twitch for a long time, or are you kind of like the rest of us, where it's like the past like 2 years or so, we've all kind of flocked to here?
Yeah. So I think 5 or so years ago, I used to stream on and off just for fun. Like it was at the time nobody was doing music, and I was actually being told that if I'm not streaming games, I'm going to get kicked off of Twitch. So I have to switch to games and stuff. But yeah, that ended up not being true, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I kind of stopped streaming because I was getting kind of busy, and streaming wasn't really the cool thing to do, I guess.
Hmm.
However, when we released the first album, One, I started this stream that had a countdown on it, and a lot of people started paying attention to the stream because of, well, when there's a countdown, you want to see what's at the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when people started paying attention to that, I realized I could like become Twitch affiliate because the stats were right. Like I had like my 3 viewers and my 12 hours of streaming or whatever. And so I did it. And then I was like, okay, let's start streaming. And then pretty much just went from there. So I guess my real start was like my official start was April 2019, but I was streaming a little bit before that. Yeah.
Oh, cool. See, and that's something that I've noticed from a lot of the Twitch music streamers. Like, you have like I'd say like the biggest mainstay I've seen in Twitch music is Whittler. Like he's been streaming on Twitch for I think about like 4 or 5 years now, doing music, which is really cool. And I think Nexi is the next longest running one. I think he's been doing it for like 3 years, 3.5 years, or so. And then everyone else has been like in that time, slowly climbing in. Like I started streaming on Twitch in February. Like Carter's been streaming on Twitch for forever, but he's switched to music about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Like pretty much everyone, like the music scene exploded on Twitch in the past year. Like, did you notice that?
Well, I wasn't paying too much attention. The only
Fair.
exposure I had was from Protostar, who's been doing it for around 2 years now.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
3 years.
I forgot. I always forget about Protostar because he doesn't stream a ton, but he streams consistently. He just doesn't stream very often.
Yeah, I like his streams. They're I think the Battle Royale thing is very original. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's super fun. So, are there any other Monster Cat artists who stream, or is it just you and Protostar?
I'm not really sure. Like, I really don't know. I'm guessing maybe World does some streams. I'm not sure. I really don't know.
Okay, for sure.
But I think in their Discord you can check it out. Like they have all their streamers in one list. So
Oh, I did.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I guess we can talk about it now, or we can talk about it after the production stuff. But if you're comfortable with it, I would like to talk a little bit about like how you got signed to Monster Cat and how that whole thing happened. I think it might be better for after if you're more comfortable with that. But if you wanted to talk about it now, we can.
It's cool.
Huh?
We can talk about it now if you want. It's cool.
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess why don't you just describe to us, like, how did you and Monster Cat first connect? Were there any tracks that like got turned down, or was it like, you saved up a couple tracks and then you sent them all to them and they liked one of them, or how did that whole thing work?
All right, it's actually a really fun story. So I was doing a lot of dubstep stuff in 2014, and I didn't really care too much about making like a professional artist name and whatever. I was just kind of messing around on the internet, and it was pretty popular at the time. So then somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey, maybe you should make like a serious logo and whatever, and like some unique kind of tracks that aren't just dubstep." And I was like, "Okay." So I wrote this song called Minty, and this is actually interesting. So I always put like MP3 tags into my demos and like art and everything. So I put the art, I put MP3 tags, Volant, whatever. And then it actually turns out my friend had sent this song to Going Quantum from Monster Cat. And then like I never heard from him back. But 1 or 2 months later, like I just get an invite from him on Facebook, and he's like, "Okay, I just saw this song on my desktop called Volant Minty. Is that yours?" And I'm like, "Yeah. So can we do something with that?" I'm like, "Sure." So this is really important. If you have like a demo or a promo or whatever, always tag your files, because like this was named like some random stuff, but the tag actually helped them find me and get in contact with me. So super important.
Oh, like the MP3 artist tags and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. That's really smart. Oh, yeah.
If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have gotten on the label. So that's kind of crazy, but yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that's a lesson to take away. If you are exporting your songs as MP3s, like use those what is it, ID3 tags, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna start doing that. Jeez. Cool. So did they sign you for the song, or did they sign you as like a recurring artist? How did that work?
So the way they work is they always sign individual songs. They never sign like an artist. So once you have like 1 or 2 songs on the label, they're very receptive to any new demos. So like if I send them something now, they do listen to it, and well, then I can like release it on their label. But thing is, I haven't sent them anything in a long time. So yeah, but yeah, I really like that business model, because I feel like when you get signed to a label and you're tied to them, that's rarely a good thing. So,
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you prefer to be an independent artist.
Yes.
I dig that.
I do prefer that.
I dig that. I've heard a lot of differing schools of thought on that. Why do you prefer to be an independent artist? Like, do you think that there's just no benefit to having like that type of institutional support, or is it you want to have more freedom? How does that work for you?
I think there are definitely benefits, but if somebody told me, "Oh, we need a new single every 3 weeks or something," then what happens to me is I get very uncreative, and if I have to make the same thing over and over, it just doesn't work for me. Right now, I'm releasing with no label or whatsoever because it turns out if I just make whatever comes to mind, then I do things that are a lot more interesting to me personally than if I try to write the next catchy tune. So
I
that's kind
respect
of
that.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, yeah, I'm just saying like it's kind of better for the kind of music I want to make.
Totally, I get that. Well, I mean, with that being said, why don't we start to shift into the main part of this, where we're going to be listening to a couple of your tracks and actually talking through your process.
Sure.
So on screen, you should have, if I remember correctly, this is the track off of 2. This is Brightest Night.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up this song, and for everyone on stream, I'm going to be playing it for you so that we can hear it in full stereo and all that stuff. Volant and I tested out a couple of different streaming things, and we couldn't quite get the best audio solution. So when you're hearing the track coming from Volant's FL Studio, it might sound a bit weird. I think it comes through in mono, so any stereo information might not come through, but you'll be able to hear everything perfectly here. And I think the music will come through the call Volant, so I don't think you need to listen on the stream.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to play that for y'all now. Fuck yeah, dude. That was fucking awesome.
Thank you.
Such a good track, dude. Just like honestly, it's so fascinating watching you move through the project. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. Before we really go too deep into it, though, I do want to talk a little bit about how this song started. Like, what was the inspiration for this track? Where was the first sound, or was there a theme? Like, how did this whole project get started?
Sure. So, actually, the original inspiration for this came from this video game called Gran Turismo 4. It's a PlayStation 2 game, just a racing game, and I'm not sure which track it is, but one of the tracks I was just driving along, and then I actually listened to the song, and I ended up like stopping the car and just looking around and like just chilling because the song was just really deep in a way. And I ended up writing a melody here, like this main melody in the drop, I guess. This is a drop, yeah. So the chorus melody, basically, that's the first thing I had, and I really wanted to turn it into a track. So the rest was kind of just built around this one part.
Cool. Well, I'm going to put us back on just the main view. So the DAW is full screen. So why don't you just start talking about the song and the process, whatever you want to say, and we'll go from there.
Sure. All right. So I'll maximize this for now. So just the playlist view. So I hope this is going to play properly. Let's test it out. Everything good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, cool. So this is basically what I started with. I just had this pretty basic, just a bass line and some chords. Everything's made in Harmor, so it's my favorite synth. It's very easy to work with.
Can you explain a little bit about what Harmor is for people who don't use FL Studio?
Sure. So Harmor is an additive synthesizer. So what that means is like, let's see. So if we have Harmor open here, we can actually display I guess this is like a frequency spectrum. You can see every individual frequency that Harmor is making. And so what additive is instead of synthesizing like a complete saw wave, what it's actually doing is it's taking the saw wave apart into all its individuals. So we've got this right here, it's just a sine wave. And then what it's doing is it's stacking all these sine waves to create that saw. So like, so we can actually listen to every harmonic in isolation.
Yeah, it sounds like a low pass or a band pass, but technically what's happening is there are a ton, like hundreds of individual sine waves that are stacked on top of each other based on some mathematical formulas and based on kind of the physics of sound to replicate pretty much any sound. It's really a fascinating piece of technology. There's a couple of other synths that do this. I believe Razor also does this, and there's like two other big additive synths, but I cannot remember their names off the top of my head. I just know Harmor and Razor.
Yeah.
But they're yeah, go for it.
The main reason I'm using Harmor actually is just because it's very fast and very efficient for me because I'm just used to working with it. And you've got all these convenient kind of, envelopes here. So I can very quickly make exactly what I want to have. So, I mean, that's just the main reason that I use it. It's very flexible. You can do a lot of things with it. It's a beautiful piece of software. Yeah, I love it.
How long have you been using Harmor?
I guess about 6 years.
Oh, then yeah, definitely. Sounds about right.
Yeah. I mean, it came out like 2013 2012, something like that. And I got it, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome. First I was just messing around with it, but I think now I can pretty much make whatever I want with just Hammer. So you can see like it's being used a lot in here.
Are there any non-Harmer synth patches in this project at all?
No.
Nice.
Except for this, which is DX.
DX7
muted.
thing, yeah.
It's muted right now.
Muted? Okay.
Yeah, but it's part of that lead.
Oh, okay, for sure.
We're gonna get into. But yeah. So chords. So now the thing I like about Harmer is turn this up. So basically I always set my patches up in a way where it's just a simple saw with some effects on it. Like for example, we've got saw with unison here. So the unison gives it that thickness. That's just a saw, right? And with the unison gets that motion. And obviously like a low pass here. And then basically the same thing, but pitched up an octave here.
Oh, for sure.
And with some resonance. So the reason I like this is because no matter what I do, it's always going to be exactly the same, yeah? So that sounds kind of dry and dead in a way, but then I get to add all these effects. Like I've got this flanger, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And that gives it like a really nice modulation that lasts about 8 bars. So it goes like up and down throughout the sequence. It's very predictable and very musical. So I really like that. And then, yeah, well, reverb on it. So it really doesn't take much to make a cool sound in this Harmer thing. Yeah, that's really all that's going on. It's just a saw wave, and it sounds incredible. So I'm very happy about this synth. But yeah, so also have a bass line under that.
That sounds like a guitar. Can you talk about the processing you did on that? Because that sounds like very close to an electric guitar.
On the bass, yeah. All right, let me see. All right, here it is. So the source sound is just this, really. And this is just, again, a saw with unison and a filter on it. So, but also one thing that's happening here is I've got some pitch modulation on this.
Yeah, I can hear.
That's why this display is very nice. It always shows you exactly what's going on. So, oops. Okay, so the way I do this, I actually use the vibrato setting here and get pretty funny. You turn it up too high. Yeah. But yeah.
Sounds like a bad opera singer.
So that. And for the processing, what I do is I have like a huge distortion on this, so this might be really loud. Yeah. So the distortion is mainly to get these harmonics in there, because like you'll see when I hold on. Yeah. So without that, we don't have as many harmonics to work with. But if I add the distortion, I've got harmonics all the way up there. And then what I do is I use this thing called Effector by FL Studio, Image Line, sorry. And then that adds the nice wah-wah kind of effect. But also because the filters are really resonant, it creates a bit of a lag. Like you'll see when I let go of my key, it'll still like have a slight resonance in post. Like
oh, so it's like a formant filter. Okay,
it's like a formant filter, but well, it has like this self-oscillating resonance. So if I were to take this EQ and do that, you know, that's what it also has like in there.
For sure.
And that's the main reason I chose it, because of that feedback thing. But yeah. But that's basically how I get the sound, just distortion. Without the distortion, it sounds it's a little too weak. But with the distortion, gets that really hard sound, which I love. But yeah, then just some high passing, compression. Yeah, I actually use these free plugins a lot on almost every sound. They're from Kierhus Audio. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but so this is just these are just my go-to plugins because they're very simple and they kind of have a bit of a cheaper sound to them, which I really love. Like, I'm just a huge fan of these plugins because they don't sound that good, but that really helps it give some character. That blurs it out. Makes the entire sequence sound way more roomy.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry?
I was just sorry. I was just talking about the reverb. Thank you. Also, thank you to Shroomhead for that raid. Thank you so much. How was your stream? Did you were working on that Sage remix, right, Volant or Shroom? How's that working? Sorry, we're getting raided. Did you hear that?
That's awesome.
Little alert sound. Oh goodness!
I like the alert. It's like literally just an alarm. Like, oh no.
Thanks again, Shroom. I appreciate it. All right. Welcome everyone from Shroom Stream. We are currently doing an interview with Volant, going through some of his tracks. Thank you, Blink Ghost, for that follow. All right. So these EQ decisions, which of these EQs are sculpting the tone, and which of these EQs are designed for mixing in with the rest of the track, or are they doing a little bit of both?
Well, yeah, it kind of is both at the same time because I'm not very systematic with my EQing. I kind of just throw on whatever works. But yeah, I can actually break down what I did here. So on this one, so you'll hear that the bass sound has a lot of sub to it. And so I tried to remove that with this EQ because when it goes into a compressor, that sub frequency will also push into the threshold and make the rest quieter. In this case, I was looking for a solid bass tone around here. So I wanted to chop off everything below 100 so I could compress this, bring out this strong bass. But then for it to sit in the mix, I had to weaken some of these resonances that I caused with the wah-wah filter, the Volant filter, I guess. So I did that, and then I also added this boost right here to bring it out in the mix more. So that sounds kind of crazy on its own, but when you put it in the whole mix, then... Because it has to compete with these resonances from that chord section.
Yeah.
So yeah,
fighting with a lot of stuff. So it's just kind of like figuring out like what do our ears need to hear in each sound, and figuring that out.
Yeah, I think of it like there's like an active part and then passive parts for each sound. So you need to figure out what the active parts are and then highlight them and pull the other ones back. So that's kind of what I did here.
Okay, could you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by that?
Sure. So I guess it's easier to explain with drums. Should we move on to drums then?
Yeah, let's start talking about drums.
Okay, sure. Whoops. These are the drums, yeah. Okay, so drums are pretty big in this project, but yeah, what I mean is kind of like, let's start with the kick drum. Let's see where it is. Okay, so it turns out this kick is actually very separated, but like it's a separated across many different channels, but I guess I can just do it here.
Interesting. Oh, so you have multiple mixer chains for the kick.
Yeah, so like there's this, which is just the transient, but that's going straight into the bus, so that's not affected. And then there's this, which is just the low end. But yeah, I guess that also kind of helps me show what I mean. Let me turn off the snare. I'm even using like the kick transient on the snare here. But yeah, so with the kick, oops. So as you can see, like the kick has a very strong resonance up here and a very strong punch here. Oops. So what I would say is like the high end peak and the low end punch are the active parts of the kick. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of hard to see here, so I'll try to pull up the actual track. Yeah, see, I've done that kind of extremely here.
yeah. You're really accentuating kind of like the main tone and the fundamental of it.
Yeah. So like without the processing, it's just a short little retro kick. And then with it, it gains that punch.
Big beefy sound, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's basically just done by boosting this and then clipping it. So see that? Just
shaving off the transient. Well, G-Clip is really, really good. I know a lot of people who use G-Clip.
Mm-hmm. Actually got recommended G-Clip by Shroomhead1. So thank you very much for that, Shroom. It's another one I can recommend. It's a free plugin called
the
Saturation Knob by Softtube.
Yeah.
And I think what this does is you saturate, but then it low passes it, like the wet signal.
Yeah, it either low passes or it has like a distortion bias where like it reacts less aggressively to lower high frequencies. And Ableton, the saturator has a similar type of bias knob where you can either increase the amount that low frequencies are affecting the distortion or decrease the amount. And I believe it's the same type of algorithm because Softtube worked on a couple of plugins for Ableton, so I think it's similar sort of process, but I could be mistaken. I think they're generally the same thing, though.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know anything about that because I'm kind of a babby when it comes to these things, but I just throw on what sounds good, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it works.
This sounds good on pretty much everything. Like every project I do, I'll have at least one of these in there. So like maybe we can get like an A/B there. Very subtle.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just making a little bit of extra beefiness. It might be something I threw on like at the end when I was mixing the track and decided I need a little bit more kick. That's probably what happened.
Mm-hmm. I noticed there's a Pro MB at the beginning of the chain that's turned off. Was that something that like you were working with and then you were just like, oh, I don't really need this because I can fix it with like EQ, or was it something that just like was during the sound design process and just didn't carry over?
Well, you see, I have like the transient and this transient and that kick on two different tracks. So what happened was, I guess I tried to keep the high end of this source sound. Whoops, sorry, that was loud.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
You're good.
So
it wasn't that loud. Don't worry.
Okay. I tried to keep this in, but I also wanted reverb on the transient, right? Mm-hmm. But then it didn't sound good with the low end. So I just removed the high end from this kick, and then this wasn't needed anymore because there's no high end to compress here. So I just turned it off. But I guess I kept it in case I wanted to go back.
Okay, that makes sense. Is this another one of the free plugins, or is it from a different company? This
one?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. This is Phaser by Adam Sabo, and it's a free plugin. It replicates the Virus TI phaser, I believe.
Oh, cool.
And what I do with this is it's a like one stage, and you can change the frequency and the feedback. And I kind of use it like a notch filter. So hold on. So it might be hard to hear on stream, but it's like a night and day difference here. So what it does is, like, maybe I can pull up a visualizer. Huh, okay. Well, it's hard to hear, but it's basically kind of like a notch filter, but also like a disperser down here. That's kind of what it does. Because phasers are all pass filters, kind of like disperser. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to use disperser here, but phaser was good enough to get that low end rumble in there. So I'm using the feedback of that phaser to notch out the mids and create like a bit of a low end rumble.
Yeah, so it's it's almost like you're using the phasing as an EQ, which makes sense because that's basically what an EQ is.
Mm-hmm. That's something I really love doing. Like, I love to use, like, instead of notching, I just use like a static phaser or a static flanger. Actually,
that's a cool trick.
Is it pronounced, flanger or flanger?
Flanger, yeah, because it's
flanger. Okay, so I'll be saying that.
Okay. I dig it. No, I mean, that's actually really, really clever. Because I know, like, for neuro sound design, if you're making like big respaces, notch filters are a big part of it, and phasers usually substitute for notch filters. They just have like a little bit of an extra resonance peak on the corners, and this is basically that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's really, really cool. Because it's sound design, but it's also just straight up mixing. Like, it's just mixing basically. So it's using an effect in a really, really creative way, which is awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah, it all goes hand in hand, like sound design, mixing, whatever.
Yeah. So, what is imperfection?
Oh yeah, this is a free plugin by De La Mancha, and what this does is it reduces the sample rate. So it's not really doing anything to the kick here. I'm not quite sure why it's there, but you can see here it's like a bit crushing kind of sound.
Yeah. It's introducing a bunch of aliasing and stuff, but not like a ton.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Also has some distortion. We didn't need that here.
So it looks like
I'm guessing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm guessing this was just here, and then I ended up cutting the transient out, so it's just a remainder, and I forgot about it.
Yeah. Now, I'm noticing that you use a lot of stock and free plugins. Is that your preference? Like, are there any paid VSTs that you find yourself using at all, or is it like you try and make do with what you have?
I barely use any paid VSTs. One of the reasons is that I don't have money, but also it's really interesting when you get into all these free plugins because they all have like a really different sound that you can't really find anywhere. So like Imperfection has a sound, Phaser here has a sound, G-Clip here. Well, it's just convenient, but it does have things that other clippers don't have, and so on and so forth.
It's almost reverb. Yeah, it's almost as if like the free plugins, because they are like a little bit like lower in quality, they have like a bit more color, which is interesting because if you look back at the history of like electronic music, there are often like a lot of people who are drawn to like basically the budget and the discount sounds, like the TR-909 and the 303. Like, they were considered bad at what they were supposed to do because they were so cheap, but they became the staple of genres, and now like they're so much more like important just because they were shitty, but that shittiness became its own trademark sound. And I think like free VSTs are almost like a similar version of that. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No, it makes perfect sense, and I really agree with it. Like, well, I guess for me it's like, wasn't the 303 supposed to be like a bass guitar emulation?
Yes,
like that?
It was supposed to be something so that bands could practice without a bassist. And it didn't sound like a bassist, but it sounded like a cool ass fucking bass when you crank that resonance into some distortion.
Imagine them actually successfully emulating a bass guitar, and all these like rave tunes just sound like doom doom doom.
They all sound like jazz and funk. Fearstick is wondering, do you use any instruments besides these VSTs and Harmor? I think the only other thing we've seen besides Harmor so far is Dext, the free Yamaha DX7 emulation. But are there any like paid VSTs at all, or are there any other plugins that you find yourself drawn to?
I don't know. I guess we'll come across them as we go through.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, Fearstick.
There's this.
Oh, Chromophone. I love Chromophone.
But this is just used in the intro as a pad, actually.
Oh, cool.
Like, it's a very...
And that chorus is like super wide. I can see the chorus on the processing chain. It sounds like that's super, super wet and wide.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's another free plugin.
Nice. Oh yeah. I mean, Tal is a
Very
great
good.
company. They make some
Tal
really good
is
products.
awesome. Like they make so much cool stuff. It's
Oh yeah, like
incredible.
I know Matt Zoe uses a lot of Tal stuff. Oh,
I guess
Vocodex.
this is also paid.
I wish I could get Vocodex. Ah, so good. Like Vocodex is like the best vocoder on the market, honestly.
I really love Vocodex. I mainly use it not to vocode. I just use it to soften up some sounds. But
With the band
Yeah.
splitting and stuff.
like it just gives it that soft kind of liquidy sound that I guess it's undesirable in a way, but that's exactly what I mean. Like you're trying to take something undesirable, inherently undesirable, and then you turn it into something awesome, and that's how you get a unique new sound. That's what I think.
I mean, that's the history of. I mean, literally, a phaser is emulating the phasing, which is the bad thing when you were doing audio recording. Like, I have two mics, and this one's like offset by 3 feet, and so it's giving me about 5 milliseconds of delay. All of a sudden, I combine the signals together, I get this. I don't want that, but it sounds really cool. What if I did that on purpose? And then you have Pink Floyd.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which is, it's so cool. I want to take a quick detour real quick. So we talked a little bit about like how you started the track. So now I want to move from like, how did you get from the beginning of the track to, let's say, like the 50 to 70% mark? It's not done, but you're like, okay, this is a song that I want to finish. Was it like a single project, like in one day, or is it something that you had to work on?
Yeah. So on the first day, I was just doing this part right here. Yeah, like this. I'll just play it. And then I was at that point and I didn't have this yet. Just had like this pad. But what ended up happening was I wrote this chord progression. So I wrote that on a piano, actually, just messing around on the piano and playing some chords, came up with that. And that ended up going into one of these saw synths. Like, this is what I meant. Like, when I was making trance, I was always making these plucky chord progressions, and that is one of them. Like, this is exactly what I used to do for every single song. Wait. Oh, I guess there's like a filter on this. There it is. So yeah, I just wrote these chords and I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And then I stuck them at the end of that. And then with the filter, it started feeling like a build-up. So then I knew I had to add drums. Just like a little drum beat that I put together from random drum machines. Like, I collect these drum machine sounds a lot.
And so do you program all of your drums in MIDI?
Yes, cool. Absolutely.
For sure.
Just got them like this in the pattern selector. And well, there's a lot of processing on this. But the point of that processing is basically just to, because these sounds are very static, you know? Hold on. So you want to add a bit of modulation to them to get them to move around. So I have a chorus. Wait, let me clean this up. Okay, got a chorus there. Some reverb. And then this is just to bring out the right parts of the drums so that they stick out on top of everything else.
Yeah,
So
like the kick, the active parts versus the passive parts.
exactly. We've got this compressor Saturn, which is hot, and some EQing just to get the bottom end of the drums more into the center. Like what I like to do is I like to mono the bottom part of the drum so that it's a little more collected and focused. When I have like stereo stuff on the low end on sounds, then I don't know, it just doesn't feel right to me. I feel like the fundamental should always be mono. I'm not sure why.
I can get that. I mean, it's more traditional, I suppose, and it keeps it in that more retro aesthetic where it's like the stereo image is very tightly controlled and it's mostly panning and chorus and Haas effect, not a lot of crazy advanced kind of stereo imaging processes like you do kind of nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that.
Yeah. I mean, this is something I do on almost every single sound. I'm not sure why, but when a sound is wide in the low end, I don't like it. I just can't listen to it. Like when other people do it, it's fine, but in my music, I don't like it. It's just
I get you.
Something I have. And one thing that might be worth mentioning here as well is got a gate on the reverb.
Well, otherwise, how are you going to sound like the 80s with a big doof?
Exactly. Just gate it off in the end. This is really cool. So without the gate, it's very loose. And with the gate, gets a little bit more focus.
Yeah.
It's very nice. I've also layered it with these drums. And this is just, let me see. There we go. Just I guess this is imperfection in action now. So imperfection, downsampling. You can kind of hear, at least on my end, I can hear how it like adds a little bit more brightness to the high end over here. So without it, that thing right there.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Happens from the downsampling.
Yeah, it just gives it a little bit of sizzle because of the like the aliasing.
Mm-hmm. It's also reminiscent of older samplers, I guess, that only had like if 11 point something kilohertz, whatever sample rate. I'm not sure, but yeah,
That's about right. That's a sharp cut. Was that a big resonance? Like right, or it looks like it's right around, right above the fundamental.
Let me see what that is. Let's boost it. Let's see what it is. Oh, yeah. So I guess what I was doing is I was trying to pitch this snare fundamental down a little, but I didn't want to affect the rest, so I just did that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Without that.
Keeping the tone consistent.
Exactly.
I get you.
And also, I guess it makes a little bit of ringing. Whoops. Yeah.
Cool.
And then, yeah, of course, cutting the low end.
Yeah, that's some pretty drastic. I'm guessing after all that processing, because it looks like that's after the wave shaper. The wave shaper added a couple of like nasty harmonics.
Well, actually, the wave shaper is just to control like this. There's like a little bit of I'm not sure what to call this, but like when you process a lot, then it gets these small peaks that you don't really need. They're not really audible. They don't really contribute in. So I just chop them off like that. And this was actually done more to isolate the kick a little more, because the kick was very stereo. But then I chopped off that stereo info from the kick. And now everything else, because like this is like snare and kick going into the same channel. So I had to make some adjustments there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And these are just resonances, I suppose.
Makes sense.
Push the snare back a little bit behind the chords. But yeah.
Now I'm noticing a couple of audio samples for, it looks like hat loops or maybe shaker loops. It looks like it's right above the percussion. Yeah.
This one right here.
Yeah.
So something that I do is, well, about this hat loop, yeah. Something that I do is I always export all samples and layered and processed snares and whatever. Whoops. I didn't think this would play, but yeah.
Oh, does it actually play the sample?
Mm-hmm.
Did it try to play every sample at once? Oh, awesome. So is this from this track or is this from another track?
This is from Interloper.
Oh,
all this stuff.
So you just reuse the same. Okay, that's smart. That's super smart.
So I found this hat loop there. And it was a little too sharp, so first I pitched it down with the FL algorithm, which is pretty imprecise, but that was good in this case. Mm-hmm. Then imperfection, of course, and a lot of reverb.
Very short.
That really gave it.
Yeah.
That really gave it that roomy sound that I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting about this EQ is that you're still preserving some of the lower tones on that hi-hat. Like that where your mouse cursor is. Like, usually I cut that out. Do you think it's better to leave that stuff in?
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But another reason is that there's actually content. I keep doing this, sorry. There's content down there from the percussion as well. Like,
oh, so you want to keep that in there?
I'm sorry about this.
You're cool. You're cool.
Yeah. So, but also on the hats, I would keep that in, because I feel like that little bit of low end to the hat is actually something the ear can track. So, if you're trying to go for the cleanest mix, you should probably chop that off, But for me, cleanliness is not that much of an issue because it's kind of built on being a little messy.
Oh yeah.
So,
I mean, that reminds me of there's an interview I saw between Carl Craig and Matthew Deere, who are like, they're both kind of like techno kind of guys. Like Matthew Deere is the guy who founded Ghostly, the record label that like Shigeto and a bunch of other like really, really talented producers are on. And they were talking about like how there's kind of these two schools of thought on mixing. They said that one is better than the other, but I think it's more of a taste thing, and I think you are more on their side of it, where the old school style of mixing, which this is trying to be in that vein, is more about kind of creating like this homogenized glue, this kind of sheen over the entire track that blends it all together and makes it feel like there's no separation. It all just feels like one cohesive song. And then the more modern aesthetic, or what I call like the Skrillex mixdown, is exactly what you're talking about, where it's like you can see every single layer, or you can hear every single layer just perfectly isolated, and it works together but in a different way. And I think that from what you're saying, like, you prefer, or at least for this style of music, you prefer to keep things homogenized. You want it to feel like one big song rather than a bunch of individual parts that are really easy to pick out.
Yeah. That's basically what I do. Yeah, that's all I'm trying to do is like, I always try to keep like, on the hat, when you have like that low thing, it's not gonna be like in the mix. Like, people aren't gonna hear that low thing, but it helps tie it together with the rest of the drums. Yeah,
they'll feel it.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that? I didn't hear that.
I was just saying, like, they don't hear it, they feel it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that sound. My mind is a little bit blown right now because what you said is like a perfect breakdown of what I want to do in the mix. It's like spot on. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a good interview. I'll send it to you if you want. It's a really, really great interview. And it's on YouTube. It's like an hour and a half long. They go into a bunch of other subjects, which is like, I recommend everyone to check out that interview. And it's just like, that piece of information is really cool. The rest of it's just, you're hearing two people who have been making music for like 2 decades talk about it, and that's always like, there's always some good information there.
Yeah. Sure, link that to me. I will love to check it out.
Yeah, I'll link it to you Well, I'll get it now. Why don't you finish up talking about the drums, or if there's anything else you might want to talk
Mhm.
about, and then we can start moving on to kind of like how you got to the ending of the track. But let's focus on where we're at right now. Just kind of talk about the different parts.
Sure. So, yeah, sure, the drums. So, let me see. Got a drum bus here. Whoops. Yeah, it's a little too loud. So these drums have like a lot of layers. It's actually crazy. So I guess we should start like simple. The first part of it is really just kick, snare, which is always a joy. So I'm using this top kick and my bottom kick. These are actually drum samples I produced for my song Go Back Home in Time. So, so they sound like this originally. And with the processing I showed earlier, just gets like this. Oops, that's interesting. Okay, so what I've actually done is I've taken the snare and I've applied a filter to it that pulls down the high end. And then I've layered in a different snare sound that kind of opens up so that I can get the reverb from one snare sound onto the attack of the other one. So like that. And this is actually Shroomhead's snare.
Huh? Shout out Shroomhead. Toma hate FL. He like Albatross. Sorry, I'm just reading Shroom's messages in chat.
Yeah, that's good. For some reason, this won't play, and I'm not sure why. But yeah, so I guess I can copy it, put it on the master. It sounds like this, the source sound. Then I stretched it out, some reverb and EQ, and saturation knob, of course.
What's UBK1?
Sorry?
What's UBK1?
Oh, this is the best compressor ever made.
Oh, wow.
So,
another
very subtle,
compressor?
But... Sorry, what?
Another free compressor?
No, this is paid. It's from Koch Audio, so...
Oh, nice.
Very good guy.
Sounds cool.
This is like the one paid plugin I use, I guess. What it does is it really squishes everything together in a really nice way. I'm not really sure how it works as opposed to like a normal compressor, but I always use it in parallel. So I'll have like 50%, and then what it does is it actually extends the snare. So without it, it's like that, and with it...
Oh, so it's almost like it's more like harmonic. Like it feels more musical, less digital.
Yeah, it really... I'm not sure what it does. It just like makes it breathe in a way, and that's very good for like... So the way I think about sound is like if you have something closer to the listener, like if something's supposed to sound closer, then you should use less reverb and less compression on it so that it's more defined. And then the background layers should be super compressed because that makes it sound further away. So that's what I've done here on this snare sample. Pushes it back. But yeah, that's our fundamental snare sound. It's not really used. I guess this just reduces the volume because, well, there's another case of me messing around with the snare way too long and then forgetting that I have this on it. So this is just like a shelving EQ then. This isn't doing anything. And here we go. This is what I meant by like passive, you know? So the snare has like a bit of a click down there, but we don't actually need that. It actually helps to notch it out. That creates more of an isolation between the fundamental and the other stuff, like the noise.
Oh,
Gets rid of that. Like
it's almost like a little like a kind of sound.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of weird, like all these small things I do, you know, crazy when I revisit it.
Yeah, well, that's the whole That's the whole thing about, making professional music. I've found it's not like you have one big thing. It's that you have all these little tiny parts that on their own aren't that like detailed, but when you consider the fact that you have like, 4 layers to your snare, like each of those layers on their own, not that bad. All those layers added up, pretty impressive.
Yeah. I really love that process. I really tried to maximize on that in this track as well. So, like, snare has all these layers, and all of this goes together in the post drum bus and the drum bus. So, like, what I do is I actually routed all of the sounds. Oops. This is hard to like demonstrate, but basically everything except for the transients is going into the drum bus, where it's being compressed with the UBK and distorted with the Saturn and EQ'd a little bit. So I'm really squishing. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You finish your thought, and then I'll ask my question.
I'm really squishing all these drum sounds, and then because the transients didn't cut through that well, I actually routed the transients to a different track that goes straight to the post drum bus. So it's hard to see, but this goes right into the post drum bus over there. So
okay, for sure. Now, what I wanted to say was one thing I noticed. Whenever you load up Saturn, it's single band. Do you ever use it multi-band? Or I've noticed that Shroom does the same exact thing. Neither of you use Saturn as a multi-band distortion unit. You use it just as like a single band, either tape distortion or tape saturation, or like an amp thing. Is there a reason for that, or is it just like you're just trying to get the tone?
Well, I kind of use it just to limit or clip the sound. So in this case, because the transient is going over there and everything else is going in here. So this just helps like squish it down. If I added multi-band, then I would be separating the sound again, and that would kind of like, I'm not sure, I think it ruins the flattening of the sound. So if I'm trying to flatten just the level of the sound, then I will never use multi-band, just go for the single band thing.
That makes a lot of sense.
Actually had G-clip on this, but I guess it didn't perform well enough, so I used Saturn instead.
Oh,
so yeah,
sure. Like a little bit also, of a different algorithm. What's up?
Exactly. Saturn has this dynamics feature, and you can use it to either squish things if you turn it to the right like that, or you can use it to bring out some individual things. So let me see, actually.
So it's almost like an envelope follower kind of thing, or like an envelope or transient shaper.
It's like a compressor. So keep in mind, this is just like the snare tails and the kick tails and all of that stuff. And I've actually automated this dynamics knob, and it goes up and down in the song depending on what kind of mood I need on the drums. So if I automate this up, the drums actually get longer and more squished. But if I automate it down, this knob, then you get more dynamic.
Cool.
So all of this is only happening on the tails, and the transients are going straight into the post drum bus, I've called it. So the transients are never affected, only the long snare tails and such. So let's see if I can demonstrate this, actually. It starts breathing a little bit more when I turn it to the right. That's what it does.
It's way more kind of like splashy, like waves.
So then at the big part, it's a lot better when it's like splashy, and that the smaller part here with the bass line. Oops. You want it to be more compact and rhythmic, and on the bigger part here. Oops. I really want it to be splashy and big. So yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about those Arps?
This one.
Yeah, that one, and also before it down there a little bit. Yeah. The one on
okay, this one is actually not in the song. This is just something I had before I decided to commit to the other one. So I'm not really sure. Let me see where... Like, this is like the main lead that we have.
Okay, for sure. So you try out a lot of different things, but they don't always make it into the project.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How
The
much of
issue
this?
was,
Yeah, go for it.
sorry.
Go for it. No, go for it.
Oh, the issue was I needed a good melody for the intro, and first I thought I would just loop this one, right? But then that didn't feel expressive enough and not catchy. And when I came up with this instead, I was just really sold on it, and that became the lead of the song. And yeah, well, I have this bass line. Is that what you meant with the arpeggio?
Well, I think it was the second to last thing we listened to. The thing before the bass line. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. And that's just the same thing as before, just with a different patch, it sounds like, or different automation.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's I made this patch a little blurrier because I wanted this to be like a very mysterious kind of feeling sound. Let me see. Wow. Epic. This keeps happening. But yeah. Let's see if I can unlock this. So this is another paid plugin I have, Reverb, which is amazing. So without the reverb, it's very dry. It's all Harmor, by the way, so the patch is again just saws. There it is. And you can hear like it's moving around a little bit. I'm actually using a plugin called Vibrato, but I'm not sure where I put it. Yeah, it's here. Wait. Okay, this is interesting, and apparently... Oh no, actually I'm using this plugin called Talc Chorus again, but what I'm actually doing is I'm putting the wet at 100%, and what that means is I only get the pitch modulation of the chorus, but I don't actually have my dry sound coming through, so it actually just sounds like I'm using vibrato on the sound.
Oh, for sure.
So in a normal chorus, you would have both dry and wet. It would create a thick modulated kind of sound, but if you only have wet, then what happens is like it does a little pitch drift up and down. So yeah, I really love that. And then the reverb before that, of course.
Makes it nice and big. And also with the reverb before the chorus, that means that even the reverb tail will have that pitch motion to it.
Mm-hmm. But then also the reverb itself has modulation, so it's getting blurry, but then that blurriness is also being moved up and down musically with the rest of the sound. So yeah,
cool.
It's like modulation on modulation.
So it's kind of one thing that, and this goes back to what we were talking about with the snare layers, where a lot of this is individual. Hold on, sorry, someone just. Yeah, I'll do that in just a second. Okay, great. Yeah. There's a quote that I heard attributed to Noisia. I don't remember who specifically told it to me, but they were talking about how rather than having one thing at 11, have 11 things at 1. And like this is another example of that, where the reverb is creating a bit of a wash, the modulation on the reverb is creating a little bit of a wash, the chorus is creating a little bit of a wash. And it looks like you have another chorus after it that's probably also, or is it turned off?
No, that one's disabled. I tried it and it didn't sound that good, so I just used this one.
Yeah, but at the very end of the chain, there is a phaser, which again, just a little bit of wash, just a lot of tiny things that on their own are not doing a ton to the sound, but when you add them all together, like if you just bypass that effect chain and then re-enabled it, it would be night and day.
Exactly.
Cool.
So that's definitely true. You would rather have like multiple things doing slight adjustments to the sound instead of like one big thing. That always helps. And yeah, this EQ is just to like change the tone from something really bassy to something really bright, because when you do these low passed sounds, you easily get way too much mid and lows and just want to bring out a bit of noisy high end. So
yeah, and when these sounds are so low pass, like you can go insanely high on those boosts and it doesn't do anything bad.
Like this just sits way better in the mix, so I had to do it.
Totally.
But yeah, this is just sidechaining, so it doesn't do anything.
Oh, so you sidechain with Fruity Limiter? You don't use like a peak controller or anything like that?
Well, no, I always use the Fruity Limiter because what you can do there is, like, I find this very easy to do. I can set like multiple different release curves, yeah. And then if I want to change the duration of my sidechain, I'll actually take my sidechain input and automate the decay of it, right?
Okay,
So I can automate this, and it'll make all the sidechains grow and shrink in proportion to each other. So if one thing has a longer sidechain on the limiter, it'll respond accordingly.
Okay, you know? So you're using, so it looks like you're using like a separate sidechain trigger, like just pretty much just like a little impulse.
Yes. And here it is. I'll play it for you. Oh.
Oh, cool. I dig it. Smart. It reminds me of like a lot of things that we'll do in Ableton, where it's like you set like a ghost sidechain channel, and you either use like a really short side stick, or you use like a single cycle of a wave, and it just gives you a little impulse to feed your sidechains rather than using your kick drum or whatever. Very similar process.
So I just always do this because when you have kicks like I do with the long reverb and compression chains and whatever, then it can be hard to get a clean source out of that. So that's why I always use this instead. It's very nice. But yeah, let me turn it off again.
Quick question about this from Suspenseful. Is a sine wave best for doing these types of impulse, or are there anything or are there any other sounds that you find work good too?
I think any sound is fine, but well, for example, if you use a noise, then you'll have always like a random sound, and that's probably not good for sidechain. A sine wave will always come out exactly the same way, and it's a very simple signal, so it's very nice for like making a control signal. In this case, I have like 3 sine waves stacked, so it's kind of, that doesn't really matter too much. Just if the signal is too complex, then you might have trouble with this, you know?
That makes sense.
Because the limiter is always going to respond to what you put into it, and if I just put like a really short sine wave, I can make it longer, short, or whatever, and it's probably going to work.
Also, what did I miss? Why is Shroom freaking out? What did you say?
I'm not sure. I really don't know. I guess something. I don't know.
Who knows?
I really don't know.
anyways. Cool. Is there anything else you wanna show off in the project?
Let's see. I'm pretty sure there's something that's. Oh yeah, this right here. Yeah, I want to show this off.
Adds and atmospheres and stuff.
Exactly. So this is something I always do in my songs. Right. So I'm not sure if this is coming through or not, but
yeah, we can hear it.
Whoa. So apparently, what I do is I have this sample pack called Monster Pack or something like that. Yeah, Monster Pack Volume 1. And this is like, I think they use this to make the effects for Half-Life 1. So that's very nostalgic to me because I'm a huge Half-Life nerd. And I always just go, like when I'm done with the song, I just go through this effects folder and try to find various effects that fit into the arrangement somehow. So like in case this one was in the same key, so I just dropped it in.
Also, a little side tangent. Are you excited for Half-Life Alyx?
Half-Life Alyx. I don't know.
I mean, it's been a while since we've gotten a Half-Life game, so I'm a little dubious about VR Half-Life, but
is the question if I'm hyped for Alyx or?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely, but I won't be able to play because I don't have Vive, and I feel like it's pretty much just like a test run for them to see if they can sell this type of game. But if this succeeds, then we'll definitely see Half-Life 3 on VR, I think.
I hope so.
That's always exciting.
Oh man, I actually it's funny. Like and this is a huge tangent, but one of my roommates back when I was living in San Francisco had this conspiracy theory where the Half-Life series was one big meme, where it takes each game progressively longer to come out, and each iteration is progressively smaller and less whole, where it's like you have Half-Life, then you have Half-Life 2, then you have Half-Life 2 episode 1, then you have Half-Life 2 episode 2, and then you have like Half-Life Lost Coast, which is like it came out before Half-Life 2, I think, or episode 2, but it's like it has like it's like just a demo, and now we have like the VR experience, which is like even smaller. And I don't like, the question is, will we ever actually get Half-Life 3? Or
Get
is
like
that the
Half-Life
meme?
3 introduction level. That's like
Yeah, like the Half-Life 3 demo.
Half-Life 3 tram ride. VR experience of what it's like in the tram. It's
Yeah,
insane.
just the opening sequence from the first Half-Life, but you get to wear VR.
I can see
Anyway,
them do that. Oh, whatever.
anyways.
So I always do this. Just go through my folder, find whatever effect could possibly fit, and then that really fills out parts like this breakdown. So, for example, I'll just play this breakdown without it and then with it. So, like, whoa,
Hello.
I'm sorry about that. It's just me being stupid. It's kind of dead in a way. But when you turn that on,
Just fills up all the space.
yeah, there's like an atmosphere here now. Like it feels like the track is somewhere, but without these ambient samples, it's kind of like it's just there. And it just kind of exists.
And so you're saying this is like the last step of the process for you. The song is done. Now you go in and kind of put in all these little bits and bobs to fill it up, basically.
Exactly. So I always put this. I guess this is also kind of interesting. So you can hear like this little arpeggio. I wonder if this is still in the project or not, but I guess I deleted that.
Oh, that was something you made in the project, and then you rendered out in Edison?
So there should be like a gray square on my screen now, but I'll drag it in from my desktop real quick. Let's hope it doesn't crash. That would be really embarrassing. Okay, it worked. So this is something I built in the summer.
Wow.
So this is Patcher on FL Studio. And what Patcher allows you to do is it allows you to connect different plugins together into one patch and then save them. So I saved this patch, and then I just use it to mess around. I record whatever I need, and then I delete it again. So
it's kind of like
it's basically like Harmor.
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, it looks kind of like an instrument rack in Ableton, but like a bit more modular.
Yes.
Cool.
You can do whatever you want here, except for I think you can't make feedback loops, which is a shame, but
oh, that would be cool.
It would be really cool, yeah. So what I've done here is I've made a Harmor patch. Oops, let me open this up. So I've got a little Harmor patch here. So that's that.
Did you just play the lick?
And what I've done, yeah, that was a little lick. So what I've done is I've mapped, you've got a little thing called pitch in Harmor, and you can map a little stairway here. Oh, it's actually the wrong one. It's that one. Okay, so you can map everything in Harmor to these mod X and mod Y knobs. And then what I've done is I've mapped the pitch to them and built a little scale here.
Oh, so it's like one note and you can arpeggiate almost.
Exactly. Because what I wanted was I wanted arpeggio that sounds really alive. So what I've done is I've built this, and then I've linked these to an XY pad in FL Studio. So now I can basically just go like this or not. I think I broke it. Let me reopen it. I broke it.
We'll get there.
Okay. now it should work. It works a little too well, actually. Looks like I actually did break it. Let me completely reload it. Technical difficulties.
All right, we get to see that photo of someone flipping us off every time you load it up.
Really?
Did you not notice that?
No. There's a photo of someone flipping you off? Really?
Yes, if you look at the file, the browser, when you, or the Explorer window when you open it up.
Oh,
look just a little bit below.
That's a friend of mine. He sent me that.
Nice.
I didn't know that was showing up on the stream. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It's a little Easter egg.
Yeah. So the patch works now.
That's awesome. So what's the Y value mapped to? If X is mapped to pitch, is Y also to pitch, or is Y to? It sounds like it's to a filter cutoff.
Yeah. So like, actually, kind of like a volume map.
Okay.
Like it kind of
very expressive, which is cool.
And the cool thing about this XY pad is you can set the speed. So if you turn it up, it like you can do that, or if you turn it down.
Oh, it tracks. Oh, that's really cool. That's awesome.
Whatever. So very fun to play around with.
Really nice.
And yeah, that gives it like an element of randomness as well. So you can make something like this.
So when you were automating this, did you automate it like kind of randomly and look to see what worked, or did you have like a specific articulation or like pitch direction in mind?
So when I made that patch, I actually realized that you can't automate the XY pad like that in FL Studio. It just doesn't do it for some reason. So I actually ended up just dragging this around with my mouse, recording, and just randomly going like boom, 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 and
oh, cool,
seeing what's cool.
Nice. I dig it. Which is nice because it gives the sound a bit more of a human feeling. It makes it come across a bit more performed. Which again, it adds to the very retro aesthetic, where instead of like all these computer parts working together, it's more like a human being is performing the song.
Yeah. I guess what I wanted to have is like, you know, like a stylophone kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine dragging that up and down randomly. That's kind of how I wanted it to feel.
Nice. That's awesome.
I loved building that thing. I probably spent like an hour or two on it. I think I was talking to Shroom while I did that. But yeah, it was very fun. Let's see. Is there anything I haven't? Oh yeah, this. We need to get into this thing. So I really need to explain this one. So that's probably the last one I need to explain. Everything else has kind of been mentioned, but yeah, this one is really important. So I'll just play from here for a second.
Did you hand draw this ARP?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you hand draw that ARP?
Yes.
Oh my god, dude. How?
It takes a bit of time, you know?
I can imagine, dude. What the fuck? That's sick.
But yeah, the backstory here is like I needed like a bass line that really built some momentum for the song. So I wrote this. Is it loud enough? Very trancy, very cool. I like that a lot. And then for the final part of that build-up, I just wanted to do like an upwards arpeggio, so I did that. Like, and yeah, this uses the same processing chain as, what was it? Yeah, this is basically the bass, but without the filter on it. So we've got the Talc Chorus with 100% wet doing like the pitch modulation again. Got a delay, got some EQing, all your stuff, basically.
Got some
nothing too crazy happening here.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Oh, just very intense EQing on not just on that parametric EQ too, but also on the chain. I can see on like the channel EQ, you got a huge boost in the highs with a little bit of a, looks like a notch around maybe 1K.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So like, well, it's like 3K, I guess, 3K, 4K. But yeah, the issue here was the sound evolves a lot throughout, like when it starts and when it goes up. So a lot of EQ settings here had to be made to like accommodate for this evolution from like this to that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that was loud. It's crazy. So what I did was I had Harmor open and wait. Oh, it's such a mess. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. You see like the low pass here is key tracked. So the higher we go, the filter will always follow the note and it'll be approximately the same cutoff, on every note.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what allows this sound to like go up here without any automation. So, oh, I'm very dumb. I just accidentally changed the preset on this EQ, which destroyed the sound. That's amazing. I didn't expect that to happen.
Oh no.
It's like FL Studio has these arrows up there and they changed the presets, and I've just basically destroyed my EQ, which is amazing.
Well, I mean, just don't save the project.
I guess I could reload it, yeah. Should I do that?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, I think we're pretty much, it looks like we're pretty much done with this song. So I really just had one additional question about this project. So we talked about how the song started. We talked a little bit about kind of the middle part, what you were working on to get the song developed. So I guess for here, why don't we talk about like the end of the process? We won't touch a little bit on it with those effects, but how did you take it from like that 50 to 70% completion mark and got it to a point where you're like, all right, the song's done. It's ready to go on the album. What was that like?
Yeah, there's a lot of things with that I could get into. I hate to say this, but is it possible that we take like a really short break? Because the thing is, I've been drinking a lot of water while we're doing this.
No worries. Go do what you got to do.
It'll be like a minute, so I'll be right back.
Yeah, that's fine. I will go ahead and hop back here. How's everyone doing? Thank you to, let's see, I missed a couple ones. Thank you to OMSTRB for that follow about an hour ago. Thank you to Sikta for that follow about 21 minutes ago. How is everyone liking this? Hello, Official Kaiju, Polaris. How's everyone doing? Hello. This has been really, really interesting. I wasn't expecting us to go this in depth on the first song, but there's a lot of really cool stuff here. And if anyone has any questions about this particular song, now's a really good time to ask. If you have any questions about kind of just Volant's process, let's try and keep that for the third section, which we're going to do after the next song we listen to from Volant. Like I know Fearstick had a question about adding the life or the spice. I can't remember the exact question. Yeah, bringing the life into a track. So Fearstick, if you could hold on to that and give me just repost it basically towards the end. How Volant ended up with a transition into Start Oasis. That's the song after this on the album, right? If that's the next track. Actually, I will admit I don't remember the track listing of 2. Whoops, wrong thing. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we can ask that at the end of this song, and we'll see. Now, is there anything else that y'all are hoping to get out of this? Because the way that I'm going to do this, for people who are new to the stream, we're going to talk about this song. We're going to talk about a work in progress that Volant has to kind of show a comparison between what is done and what is yet to be done. And then we're going to talk about just some just random fun stuff. And that's going to be that's going to be the time for the big Q&A. So Volant, welcome back.
What's up?
So before we go into what I asked about, Fend F4ND was curious about how you transitioned this song into Star Oasis. How did that happen? And if that's a good way to segue into, like, how did you finish the song? That's perfect.
Mm-hmm. So actually that transition is a complete coincidence. Like it was basically like on the Star Oasis track, I just put like something at the start, like a bright little shimmering sound. And at the end of this, I had this arpeggio. So yeah, and that just happened to be perfect transition into the next thing. So there wasn't like a big plan here; it just kind of happened to match up. So
just a happy
when
accident.
I finished the song, sorry, what?
It was just a happy accident, basically.
Yeah. It was just a total coincidence. I just put those 2 songs next to each other and was like, wow, this works really well. I really need to put these like next to each other in the album. But yeah.
Oh, cool.
There's like I need to disable like a specific plugin here that's making everything lag. So
oh yeah, take your time. And so I guess also while we're waiting, like, can you tell us about how long did you spend on this project specifically? Like, how many sessions did it take?
FL Studio has this little timer counter thing here, luckily. So it says 22 hours, but those 22 hours were over the course of maybe 3 days. So I was just working on that song every day for like 3 days straight. And then that's what I had. And the way I finished it, like on this one, it's kind of undramatic. I already had everything kind of set up to be the way it should be in the end. And the last addition I actually made were these drums. They were like over here. I'm not sure why it's lagging quite this hard, but there's like something. I guess I'll try to turn off all these Pro Rs. Maybe that's what's causing it. Yep. Okay. So you hear these gated drums on top of everything else.
Oh yeah. Very live sounding.
Mm-hmm.
Very live, as opposed to the other drums, which do sound fairly synthetic. These drum sounds just
So these actually come from a Roland kit, Roland TD10, and using exactly the same processing chain as the other drums. Mm-hmm. But, well, I guess source sounds make it. So without that processing,
I think the audio cut out a little bit. We're missing this.
Oh, really? Let me boost it up. How's this?
Yeah, I think it might just be the client just kind of acting a little bit weird. It's not a big deal.
Oh, that's weird. That's very weird. But yeah, just the same processing chain as on the other drums. Just the source sounds make it sound a lot more live. I've layered different snare hits here. So we've got this and then that.
Okay, for sure.
Like multiple hits of the same drum, and that makes it sound a lot more alive. But yeah, the before I finished the song, it was basically just this without those drums and without the effects down here. So it sounded a little too repetitive, too boring. And also this lead melody that I played earlier, that happened pretty late in the project, like because I had this other melody first. But yeah, so basically the way I did it was I just added this melody, added these drums and those effects, and then it felt really complete. So I just decided to put it out that way and not work on it too much.
Okay. After that 3-day period, this is a question for Fearstick. Did you leave the song alone, or did you revisit it at all before you put it into the album?
Yeah. In the 3-day period, I got everything done except for that lead, those drums, and those effects. So I left it for maybe 2 months or so, and then I came back to it, did these things, and then I was like, okay, now it's ready. And that's something that I do very, very often. I'll have like a project, and I'll do some things within like 3 or 4 or 5 days or something, and then I'll wait like a long time, and then I'll come back to it and be like, yeah, well, it's just missing a couple things, and then I'll put it out.
Yeah, you're giving yourself that mental distance from it to kind of let it just sit. Makes sense.
Yeah, because sometimes your judgment can be really clouded. Like, for example, if you spend a long time on a specific part, you might start loving it just because you spent a long time on it, but it's not actually good. And I try to avoid that with my songs, which is why I kind of make things in a lazy way at first, and then I walk away from them, and later on I'll understand what's important and what isn't, and spend the time efficiently.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. You just do what gets the song done to start, and then you leave all the real heavy lifting, so to speak, for later on. Makes a lot of sense. Cool. I don't know if there's anything else. If there's anything else specifically that you wanted to talk about for this track, you can. But I think that about does it for this. I can't think of anything else. Does anyone have any other questions about this track, or do we want to move on to the work in progress? What do we think, chap?
I can come up with anything to say about it. Like, I think I've said everything I could.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So let's move on to the work in progress.
All right. So I guess I'll end like the screen share for a second because I have to switch over to the other one. Or can I do that like?
You should still be able to do it here. I'm going to move back to the interview screen because we're going to be listening to the track anyways. Before we listen to it, so you can get that set up. All right, so this is a work in progress that Volant sent to me. That is special just for the stream. Even Volant wasn't sure about which track to share because there are secret memes, and he doesn't want to reveal the secret memes. So here is a little thing that he was working on even before stream today. And again, you'll be able to hear this in the call, Volant. So I'm going to play this in just a couple seconds. Awesome. That was fucking sick.
Awesome, yeah.
Nice, nice. Well, I mean, same exact process as before. Why don't you tell us how this track got started, and then just walk us through it.
All right, sure. So this project has about 3 hours on it right now. I started it on December 2nd. So yeah, it's actually not just something I whipped up for the stream. This is like, I really want to work on this and finish this because, so what happened to me during the production of my album 2 was I started off with more 80s kind of retro kind of stuff. But from doing a lot of these tracks, I found myself slowly coming closer and closer to more like early 90s kind of electronica, using a lot of like break beats and stuff like that. So it actually feels like an organic kind of evolution to the next era in music for me. Like, I'm not really sure. I just feel really drawn to these 90s kind of sounds. Like, I think I produced a song called Pearl Blue Soul as well, and that song used a lot of break beats. So that was my first taste of using almond breaks and that kind of stuff in my music. And I guess I got a little bit hooked because now I'm just doing this all day.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the way this actually started was, so I have this channel here called Resampling Station. So what this actually is I've used Patcher here to build myself a little. Well, it's a bit of a.
Oh god. Okay.
So this took me a couple hours to make. Yeah, like 1 or 2 hours. So what this does is it analyzes every frequency individually, like that, and then that is linked to another EQ, which has a lot of small bands and pushes everything down. It's like, let's see if I can demonstrate this. So I'll load up this break here, and we'll route it into the resampling station, and let's take a look. Let's see if we can hold on.
Lost the audio for it.
Here we go. So every frequency is being analyzed individually here. Yep. And then that's going into these peak controllers, which measure if something's coming true or not. And when something's coming true, it's actually reducing the level of the controller, and that allows us to link that to these EQ bands, and then these will push everything down just like that. So it's kind of like this plugin Soothe, Oak Sound Soothe, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is these are parallel, so they're all like phasing with each other. So this is like causing a lot of phasing, a lot of distortion up there. And you wouldn't get that with Soothe. Mm-hmm. So this is really not a mixing tool. This is very much a character tool.
Sound design thing, yeah.
So I've done that. And then it also has like a bit of a compression to it. Like this is basically just a dynamic EQ, but it has a bit of a lag to it. Like this actually responds a little bit later than it should. Mm-hmm. So it'll really raise these transients. So like I'll try to like mess with this. Like if I really slam this down, you should hear like the clicking.
Yeah, you can hear all the pokey parts of the transient come through.
Mm-hmm. So you might think like, what's the point of this? Why don't I just use Soothe? Well, the point of this is I wanted to emulate like when these breaks got sampled in the 90s and 80s and whatever, then each of the tunes like sampled it from another tune, and every time they added on another layer of compression or EQ or whatever, and then that created all of these distortions and odd effects and whatever, and that made it very, very, very messy. And I wanted to replicate that in a quick way, and this happened to work for that really well. Okay. Because all of these EQ bands phase, and then if you run them in parallel, they phase even more. So it's very crazy. Then I have this thing.
The sound completely, yeah.
So this basically, it's just like an EQ that it has a little boost, then it's being distorted, and then it has a cut. So like this basically just allows me to make a very low-end heavy distortion. So let me see if I have a good way to demonstrate this. Okay, that's the one, this one.
I'm curious, do you have any sort of noise suppression going on inside of Zoom? Any noise canceling? Like check the settings in Zoom real quick.
Okay.
Just to make sure. Because I'm noticing that like when you're not talking and it's playing, we're not hearing it.
Okay.
If there's any noise gate or anything, just double check and turn that off.
It has an automatic volume setting.
Oh yeah, I would probably disable that.
Okay, so how do I sound? Everything good?
Yeah, you're a little bit loud, so I'd probably turn the overall output down just a smidge.
Wait, how's this?
Much better, much better. And then try playing the track. Still not coming through, which is weird.
That is very strange.
It's not a huge deal, I think. I don't think it's going to ruin it for us.
Let me see. Can you hear anything, or is it just quiet?
Yeah, it's playing, but it's very, very quiet, almost imperceptible.
Okay, so
we had it for a second, and then it cut off.
That is weird.
Ooh, now that's super loud, but we can basically kind of hear it.
Yeah, so this is basically just EQ boost, distortion, and then EQ cut. So this is called like emphasis distortion, emphasis EQ.
Mm-hmm.
So similar to what you explained with the Ableton saturator or distortion or whatever, where it creates like a bias. So yeah, this is like all kinds of stuff. This is like an EQ, and then that's being like what I'm doing is I'm isolating the delta of this EQ boost. So like just the difference between wet and dry. So only the boost is coming through, and then that's being compressed and then also distorted. So yeah, crazy routing going on here. But yeah, these are like my little tools that I built to create the quality loss that I'm looking for.
Oh yeah.
So
it's all trying to like make some crazy breaks basically, and then just layering things around that.
Yeah. I always do this with the breaks and give them some character, and then I go from there. So
now, do you re-slice the breaks, or are you just trying to maintain the same groove of the original?
I've sliced this one.
Okay.
Then I added the processing. I'm not sure if this is coming through or not.
It is at first. It's almost like there's a noise gate on your voice, and whenever you stop talking while it's still playing, it goes for like a second or a second and a half, and then it cuts off.
Was it like that the whole time, or is that new?
It has been. I think that's been what's going on the whole time. So if you have a noise gate on anywhere, that is it. We tried Discord screen share Fear Stick. It's a little bit worse. It's a little bit worse.
Oh. Wait, no. Okay, I'm very confused about this.
Yeah, I mean
one thing I can try is. Oops. Oh wait, there's actually something going on my computer right here.
Oh,
that looks good. Okay. Let me try this out real quick. So if I lowered this.
Yeah. Might have been good to test this before stream, but hey, this is the benefit of live content.
Think this is supposed to happen, so it's kind of...
Yeah, we weren't expecting that.
It's not what I usually have going on. So, okay, my voice should be good now, right?
Yeah, your voice is fine.
Right, so...
Yep. Oh.
Is it bad or good?
It starts out fine, and then it gets quiet all of a sudden.
So... I've got this setting here that's like... Spacebar does something, so maybe if I turn that off... Let's see.
Oh, that did start a same sort of thing. But it's okay. We can keep going. Just know that you might have to like say random words in between while it's playing, just so we can hear it.
Oh well. So I resampled a bunch of these breaks here. So I've got like.
That's now a little bit loud. Let's turn that down a smidge.
This right here. It's like the break I showed earlier. So that's just the same thing but resampled.
Mm-hmm.
And also did that one. Yeah, that's a different break, but also run through the same chain. So the setup that I had here just allows me to quickly make these really processed kind of breaks as opposed to like using the dry ones. So yeah, that's definitely something I really got into, like the 90s kind of sampled, resampled, whatever sound everywhere, like just crazy. And then, yeah, I'm not sure if some people might have noticed, like over here, I've got like this little thing. 6 million. Hear that?
Yeah. A little bit.
That little PS2.
Oh yeah, it is the PS2 sound. Yeah, the quality of sound just dropped a bunch.
Oh, okay.
So whatever you had before this, let's go back to that.
Okay.
Just because that one was working, and now it isn't. Yes, it is a PS2 sample. Nice.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
We found it.
I think I did, yes. But apparently there's no way to turn off the reverb suppression, so let's see. Is this better?
Yes, it's very loud.
Okay.
Very loud, but yes.
That's a shame that we only figured that out like at the end of the stream.
Right.
Oh well, so 6 million years from now. So that right there, it's actually not a sample. It's not a sample. I actually went and made that in Harmor. So yeah, that's a little fun thing that I did.
That's impressive. So wait, did you just like take the recording and basically not resample, but like recreate it, or?
Yeah, I listened to this and then I was like, yeah, I can make that. That's not hard. So I made it.
Wait, you have the sample. Why didn't you just do the sample?
But because I think it's more fun to like know how something's made and then actually use your own version of it. Like, now it's personal. Now it's like a personal sound and not just like, oh, I sampled the PS2 because PS2 is cool,
No, totally.
Now
that
I've
makes
actually
sense.
put effort into it.
I dig it.
Yeah, I always do that. Like, yeah, you could just sample something, but if you can recreate it and people are fooled, then that's like something to talk about. Like that's something to,
to share with
show off on stream, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Feels very really PS2, cool. This entire patch. But yeah. This is really just like I really just messed around with this until it sounded good. But like it has the low layer and then it has that kind of high harmonics. So nothing really too crazy going on here. Some EQing to shape it and sound goodizer, of course. Very important. But yeah. So I made that and I was like, yeah, this has to go in. 6 million years to die. So yeah. This hat right here actually was me trying to recreate that. But it turns out this is a very complicated sound and you can't really just,
Yeah, it's not quite as simple as the,
Yeah, that's like, I know how they did it now, but there wasn't enough time to do it before the stream, so I can probably do this like another time. But
for sure.
It's like they had like one specific pad chord and then they layered it 3 or 4 times on top of each other. So that's like, you would probably have to make something like this and
then just layer it in audio or something. Okay, for sure.
So yeah, that's just again, like just not even doing any changes on the chords here. It's literally just like the chord and then it slides down because that's what makes it feel more retro in a way, because I guess back in the day they also just sampled like single pad loops and they pitched them up and down so that it would like sound different. Yeah.
Nice.
So
talk about this Reese.
Exactly. Very simple. It's just saw waves, and then they have unison, so really simple. I added like a phaser for more motion. Very hard to hear, but it's there. And then of course imperfection, this time on very low settings so that like you can really hear that bit crush up there. So yeah, that's a very subtle effect, but that really helps make something sound way more retro.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this is
Go for it.
It's really hard for me to like say what I'm trying to say. The point is, I always have like a central element, a central idea when I make a song. So like I started this, and my central idea here was I wanted to have a song that's really heavily based on these break beats, but and also like a kind of PS2 kind of feeling. But I wanted to make sure that I always add my personal touch and my personal experience to everything, so that I'm not just like you could just go and sample some random breaks tune or some random D&B tune from the 90s and take the break, or you can go through the trouble, make that patch to like resample, make that PS2 sound, like you can do all of these things, and then that simple like breaks tune turns into like a real experience and like becomes a lot more honest to me. Like, I could just steal these things from other songs, but this way it's like I made all of this from scratch, and that feels great,
It's very I made this kind
exactly
of name. I made this.
Exactly. So like on the surface this might not be that impressive, but because like I sat down and tried to do all of this from scratch, I think that's what really makes it me, like all these small personal touches that wouldn't be there if I hadn't self-made it.
Little individual decisions that like aren't going to be replicated by just straight sampling, or by using like a sample pack loop or something.
Yeah,
totally. It's interesting because that actually gets into kind of a lot of questions that I usually ask during this process, which is like, let's use this song as kind of like a microcosm of every song that you make. So when you're starting a new song, like what is your mindset? You kind of touched on a little bit by saying like you focus around an idea. But can we talk a little bit about like what is the usual process for like starting from a blank DAW to getting to like maybe not where you're at here, but like where you were at before you started working on it this morning or this evening, I guess, for you, and how far do you usually get in that first session?
Sure. So the first thing I actually did here were these chords. So let's go over here. So this wasn't on them, and let me see. So I just had like these chords here. So I actually started out with this piano here. It's just FL keys. Sounds very robotic and hard and not very dynamic or expressive, and that's perfect for this kind of stuff. And my idea here was just like I really wanted to have this this kind of rave pitchy chord sound. I'm kind of obsessed with that. Like I just love it. Then the piano alone wasn't bright enough, so I had to add this saw wave. It's really just like saw with unison and a volume envelope, so anybody can make this. It's very easy. Very cool. And then that just like that alone is like that's enough for me to like be like I'm moving around in my chair right now while listening to this because I just love this. It's just so me, it's just I've heard this a million times in video games or in rave records or older stuff, like or even like nowadays with the future house stuff that's coming out. Just it's always been there in my life. This is like the best sound I can think of.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, then I also added this
stack.
Very basic respace, just saw, unison, distortion. That's it. That's all you need. So this is what I had, and then I added this breakbeat to it. Wait, what? Let me disable that lead. So that's all it was. Just had this part. And yeah, that alone made me think like, yeah, there's something here. Like I need to explore this. Like I want to build a song around this theme of breakbeats and pitching chords and, respaces. I felt like there's something here that I need to explore. So that's what made me push for this project more. And then I came up with this lead melody as well. It's actually the bass rees, but then pitched up and then playing individual notes like that. So that's basically all I had before I started today. And then, yeah, that sold me on the idea. I was like, yeah,
okay, cool.
I need to explore this. Let me see what else. Yeah, and the drop here after that is basically just like, because the progression ends on this note. I wanted to stay on that note because that has like a darker, kind of more serious feeling to it. So that had to be in there. Then these two breaks resampled the same way as the other ones. I added on these top drums. And I've got saturation knob, of course, G clip, of course, and reverb. So like if I take all of these off.
Yeah, the snare's way different without it.
Mm-hmm. And then the saturation knob actually lowers the snare for some reason. Because it's being saturated harder. Mm-hmm. That kick sounds very 909 with that saturation on it.
Very rounded, kind of almost triangle-y feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's super long as well, and I did that. Like when you have short kicks, then you can layer like one long kick in there, so that just works. Wait. So I've also been listening to a lot of like G Jones lately, and some EPROM, and they have a collab out. It's called Damon Vale, I think that's what you pronounce it, but that also, like, I mean, I didn't know about this for a long time, but, like, I'm not a long-time G. Jones fan or anything like that. I just discovered that, like, a month ago or so, but I got into it, and I felt like, yeah, I like these breaks, and I have a personal connection to breaks. I want to try making a drop that isn't just, like, usually I have, like, a really straight beat, but here I just have, like, super swung. It's very much just flowing and not, like, a straight kick drum or anything like that.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm noticing that's like it's something that I notice in a lot of people's music when they're still trying to get better at writing, and it's something that I see you were doing, where the main kick pattern, like the thing that I think it's on pattern 8, I think that's like the shorter kick, right?
Yes.
That's the same exact rhythm as the chord stabs in the previous section. So even though the chords aren't there, we still kind of get that rhythm imparted on us.
Mm-hmm. Actually, interesting. What does it sound like without that? Let me try that.
It feels almost like a different song for a moment. Like it feels like it's unconnected, and it's like just that one element, that same rhythmic idea, almost like a motif in a way, like a certain thematic idea in the song. It ties the whole thing together.
Yeah. See, it's like, now that you said that, like I might do like a drum fill or like a fill at the start of second drop where I don't have this for like a couple bars. Then it would be
and
like
then
a
you
nice
come back in with that. Oh yeah, that'd be really cool.
Exactly. So like that's another thing that happens in my process a lot. Like I'll remove something or add something, and like from that I'll get ideas for a new part. So for example, I just had this idea, so like I might actually, copy that over there and then leave it there for a while and just write until I hit that point and see if it fits. It's kind of something I would probably try here. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So what I did with that Reese was it's not really here. It's like over there, I guess. So it's kind of hard to hear, but what I try to do is I try to
Getting the phase cancellation to pulse with the metronome, right?
Exactly. I'm trying to get the pulse synced up. So like it's like I'm not sure if I can somehow like tap this out or something. It's like it's
wow,
doing like a
wow,
polyrhythm.
wow, 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 wow,
Exactly.
wow. I get it. I get it.
I can't play it. Whatever. But you can hear it. You can feel it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I tried to do that. And then over here, I actually had this like way higher before. I think it was like that. But yeah, it was a little too brutal.
So you had to soften it up and stuff, yeah.
But yeah, so like for example, if I were to come back to this project, like let's say the whole song is like written and I come back to the project, then I might go in here and like try to mess with this spread setting here. Like I might go and try to automate that to make it more rhythmic throughout the song and create some special parts here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I will do later on in the project generally, because right now, yeah, I could get into this and like automate 600,000 things here. But what if I hit a roadblock with the track like way later on, like over here? Then I spent all that time and don't know what to do, later on in the song. So I'll generally keep those kind of where you fiddle around and like have to tweak something for a long time. I'll keep that for way later and just focus on a really basic build like that,
Yeah, I mean that actually it's similar to the previous track, like what you were talking about, where it's like all the main details came in towards the end of the production timeline. And I feel like one thing I noticed for a lot of artists who are good at keeping a productive output is they don't worry about like the individual elements. They worry about like getting the song done, and like all the fine details. It's like if something is clearly not working, you spend time on it, you invest a little bit of time into it to make sure it works so that you can move on to the next section, but you don't spend like 2 hours tweaking a snare until you need to spend 2 hours tweaking a snare. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But also, I'm guessing for this specific like retro kind of, I don't know if it's retro, you can argue about that, I guess, but like for this breaks stuff, I feel like back in the day when they made this stuff, they didn't exactly have the option to worry about 50 snare layers or something like that. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've seen like a video of an Aphrodite track where he's using like an Akai computer, or like Amiga computer, actually Amiga, and like trackers and stuff. And I'm not even sure how he does that, but he's got like all of these small chops and whatever, and he loads them up into the sampler, and then he's basically doing the entire song in 4 tracks, which is insane. So yeah, I feel like, sorry?
It's okay. It's not a big. I'm just thinking of another artist that has a similar sort of process. But keep going.
Sure. So I think it's good to practice a bit of restraint with the amount of tracks you want to use in songs like this, just because, well, the style lends itself nicely to using very few tracks, unlike more orchestral kind of things where you just need a lot of tracks. But here it's like, well, you want to keep it as simple as possible, just because that's historically how the song sounded.
Exactly. Well, I mean, with that, I'm kind of curious, like, how much would you, or how far would you consider this song in terms of development? Like, if you had to give it a percentage of completion, what would you say that is? I know it's a weird question.
No, it's a good question, but it's I'm trying to answer it like productively, so it's kind of I guess it's not really sure, because there's essentially like no limit to how much you can chop up a break or how much you can mess with like a bass sound. So depending on what the arrangement sounds like at the end of me, like structuring out the song. I might say, okay, this needs like a different section that has to be completely different, or it needs like way more sound design or whatever. Then, then that can take up to like another 30, 40 hours.
Okay, so it really depends, honestly, on like just what's going on. You can't really put a hard decision on it.
So like, let's say I was writing an album and I decided like, okay, this song needs to be the craziest one. Then I'll sit down and spend another 10, 20 hours making it crazier. But if I was to just finish this, then I would say, like, I'm estimating it to be like maybe 20, 30% done, 40%, something like that. Because, well, I like it, It's just, I guess I would have to like send this around and get more feedback from people, like, and then depending on what people say, like how complete it sounds. Like sometimes a song can be really raw, like this, super raw, not much edited on it. And then because of that, it's like a good song. So if that ends up happening for this one, then I might not even do that much. Like I might keep it like this just because, yeah.
I get that. Well, I mean, then what do you think? Like, and obviously this isn't necessarily what you're going to do, but hypothetically, what would you do to take this track from where it's at to completion? To get it to a point where it's like, okay, I can say this song is done and I can get ready to release it.
So if I had to do that right now, I have to build on this part a lot more. So like the structure I have in mind is I'll have like a bassy part here, like that thing. And then I'll have this melodic part in between. I try to think of all musical parts in my song as a jumping board to the next part. So like this, for example, I would probably do like a sweep up here and some kind of drum fill over there, add a longer bassy part with more stuff going on than this, I guess. Then I would try to find a way back to the melody, but this time maybe expand on it, like maybe make some kind of jazzy thing with like maybe DX7 piano or something of the sorts, just to, take it from this 90s and PlayStation 2 mood to something different. And,
okay, so
I can mess with that, but I wouldn't know how long that would take.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying to put a timetable on it, but like it sounds like you're using the same musical information, but you're changing like the musical context, like all the different timbres and all the different sounds and all the different atmospheres. But at the core, it's the same, basically the same MIDI notes and basically the same grooves.
Yeah, that's right. Like this groove right here, right? Like I would try to build the whole song around this groove and like keep this groove going throughout most parts. So like it might not be in every single part, but you could put it in every single part and it would fit. So that's kind of also like it's probably something that helps me build an entire track of something like this.
For sure, yeah, like a continuity theme essentially.
Yeah.
I dig that. Is there anything else in the project you wanted to show off? Because I know this one's a work in progress, so obviously there's not as many details as with the finished track. But if there's anything else you wanted to point out, you can. I actually, like you, I've been drinking a lot of water, so if it.
Sure. It's your turn. All right. Guess this is the Volant takeover. I got Stream Chat open, so if you want to ask questions in the chat, I'm reading it, so don't worry. Yeah, so I could talk about this project for years, dude. Like, I love this entire thing. So the theme here is clearly a lot of like down sampling. So got this thing imperfection up here, which is sample rate reduction. All right, I'll do Shroom's request real quick. Hold on. Enjoy. So these things are going together into one bus, like the chords and the bass. And they'll be in bit crushed here, which adds a lot of vibes to it here. And then on these chords, I actually have a flanger. 6 million. Let me see. And this, welcome back, Musar. So this flanger is turned up way too high. Like I've got the feedback maxed out, but then what I'm doing is I'm automating the delay time. And if you do that, you can actually kind of imprint like a different note onto the sound. So I'm actually using that. So instead of like writing a lead over the chords, I'm using the flanger to like imprint notes, because also I might not be getting it like exactly spot on. Like I might be slightly off, and then that'll create a more interesting overtone than it would if I were to layer an actual synth over it instead of this. Right, so on its own, it's not that crazy, but in the mix... Oops, let me turn off that guy. But it sounds strange, it sounds weird, and that's what I like. Like, if it's not exactly obvious what it is, then that can be very, very good for a tune like this, where not a lot is happening in the first place, because then you tend to, like, wonder about this... the small sequence, as opposed to like when it didn't have any of this going on. Like if I turned all of this off, then like yeah, that's a hype sound, like that's some cool chords, but it doesn't really have the same mystery to it as that, you know. Yeah, it's completely off pitch actually. But the awesome thing with doing this is you can only emphasize things. Like we're not actually making anything. It's just like emphasizing different things. So like we can just basically draw whatever we want with this, and we'll always get a new sound, but it'll always fit. So like we can basically emphasize whatever we want here. So I'm a huge fan of this. Oh, this down here, this
6 million ways to die.
that
6 million ways to die. Choose one.
So this actually, I don't know how I got this. This is just like a pack full of reggae samples,
nice.
Which I picked up. It's like a random website. Like something I do a lot is I go like to random websites and I kind of just rip all the samples I can find. So I'll collect all these like weird drum machines over here. Like there's a website called KB6, and I'm not sure if that's coming through, but
Yeah, we can hear it all. Yeah, you don't have to turn it up. We got it. But yeah.
sure. So it's a great name for a sample, I guess. Right. What are these sounds? Like,
That's a weird. That's not a kick drum at all.
exactly. Who would use this? And that's exactly what I want. I want stuff that nobody knows how to use. Like,
because then you get to use it.
exactly. And people are like, how'd you get that? And I'm like, well, I guess I just spend all day looking for stuff.
Oh yeah, I get that. I mean, it's just, I do a similar thing where it's like if I hear something cool on YouTube, I'll just record it. And I just have like a huge stack of just like recordings of like YouTubers and like tutorials. And like last night I found like I went into the weird part of YouTube for like science and math nerds, and I found a bunch of YouTube videos of essentially different computer sorting algorithms visualized and then connected with frequency generators. So it was just a bunch of like risers and downlifters that you just kind of like, now I have them from random algorithms that they're all going to sound unique. So it's a lot of, it's akin to like how old school DJs back in like the big vinyl days before we got like CDJs and shit like that would go crate diving. They'd go to the record store and they'd look for pressings that no one had. And this is the same exact thing, only using sample libraries.
Yeah, that's awesome. The sorting algorithm thing is like, did you sample that before, or is it just you're still yet to do that?
sorry, one more time.
Have you sampled the sorting algorithm things yet, or do you have yet to do that?
Yes, no, I have. Also, Ryan, can we save that question for the end? We got a couple of questions that people are asking that I want to save for the post part. But hold on, let me let me play that because I just sorted my thing. So this should be. Here's one. You hear that?
Dude, that's insane. Whoa.
Yeah, here's another one that's really good. Wait. Yeah, just all noise, and all of a sudden. Yeah, like it's all just random stuff like that. Like there's so many different videos. Like, and this is kind of the big part of for me getting a unique sound is thinking about what it is that like sonically engages you and just looking for things that make that thing. And for me, it's like it's all randomness that becomes just like very like sweeping. So it's just like all these random sounds and like turning vocals are into things are my favorite things. So like I watch a lot of like political YouTube videos. So I record a lot of those and put those through like glitching things. And it's everyone's going to have a different kind of approach. Like we're all going to find different things. Like for you, it's all these like old retro ass samples that no one would necessarily use in a track in 2019, but you do.
Yeah, I love that. Like that's just like that's exactly what it's about. Like also I might steal that sorting idea, you know.
Oh yeah, no, all these ideas are free. I literally posted the video in my Discord of one of the ones that I use, so you can find them. You can find
I
them.
wonder if those are royalty free actually.
Who knows? I mean, if you pitch it enough, who's gonna know?
Just process it.
Anyways, yeah.
These
Yeah,
they
go
just
for
come
it.
from like a random pack that are ripped off. So these are actually not royalty free, so these will not be in the final song. Like,
6 million ways to die. Choose one.
they have like EQ on it and delay and sound godizer. Always sound godizer. It's always good.
Six.
But the thing is, I can probably again like might like stand there and try to record these myself, like put on an accent and like process it and see if anybody notices that it's me. You know, it's another personal touch thing. Like I put this in here, right, the PS2, and I was sending the tune to people before I went on here, and I told them like, check this out. I sampled the PS2, and they were like, wait, really? Like they didn't notice that it was a remake. So you know that's cool.
Oh,
I like that.
That's really, really cool. Yeah, is there anything else on this?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think we went on and we went over pretty much everything because it looked like
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I think that's all.
Awesome. So before we get into the final part, and I will say if you have any questions, like Fearstick, Seffring, Ryan, and I think someone else had a question. If y'all could re-ask your questions, that would be awesome. And then I'm just going to collect those. And before we do that, I have a couple of questions that I want to focus on. Thank you, Random Vibrations, for that follow. But the three questions I want to ask is kind of related to what we were talking about before, where like the process of starting a track, the process of getting a track developed so it can be finished, and the process of finishing a track. So if someone is having trouble starting a new song, like maybe they're afraid of, like, you know, that curse of the virgin canvas where there's so many options and they don't know where to start, or maybe they aren't feeling inspired. Like, what are your tips for breaking through writer's block at the very beginning of the songwriting and production process?
Well, it's kind of hard for me to comment on that because, well, writer's block, I guess the way I experience writer's block is this: whenever I have to make something really specific, but I happen to not be in the mood to make that, that's when I get blocked. So, for example, I always had to write really catchy tunes. Back in like 2017, 2016, I always had to like make something that's catchy, something that's like memorable and stuff like that. And I got so tired of like trying to write the same 5-note lead melodies that it all just sounded the same to me and nothing was interesting. Like, I probably wrote stuff that was usable and people will probably love it, but I personally just felt like, okay, I've done this in some capacity before, so it just blocked me in a way. So I'm guessing the best way to fix writer's block is just to like completely detach from all expectations and just, you know, whatever happens in your head today is what you write down. Because the issue really isn't that you don't have any ideas. The issue is more that the ideas you have aren't what you're looking for right now.
Okay.
So that's my experience with writer's block, at least.
Makes sense. Yeah, go ahead.
You wanted to like turn into more specific advice. It's like, I personally always try to look back at like what kind of music has affected me, what kind of music has like done something to me, like emotionally, like what makes me feel things. Like, for example, Tubular Bells is like a musical piece that I feel like it's a very strong piece, and I always listen to it like when I'm feeling down or whatever. It's a very long track as well. And recently I've noticed that I've never actually done anything that's not 4 to the floor, like 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've never done like different time signatures, but I'm guessing because I remember the impact Tubular Bells had on me, I kind of want to, you know, make something that is in a different time signature and builds up slowly over the course of like 10 minutes or something. So that's an idea I'm going to explore. And from like retracing these tracks in my life that I always loved, it helps me think like, okay, wait, this is something I could try, you know, it's something I could try out. And it was the same thing with this one. Like, I was like, I haven't really done like break beats or anything, like a really break focused tune. I haven't done that. So I thought, well, let's make a processing chain. Let's make this, let's make that. Let's mess around with this and just, you know, see what comes out. And then this came out, and like, now I'm really proud of it and I really want to finish this one. So it can be as simple as that. But like, I guess writer's block is also very complex in the sense that like everybody has different reasons for being blocked. So if you want to ask me even more about that, then I'm sure I can probably give more perspective on it.
Oh yeah, and well, that's a good kind of mindset for beginning. Is like, if you're having trouble starting, don't worry about what it is you're making. Just make anything, because eventually something will come out of it. And just give yourself the freedom to not try and like make a full song, but just to make something, and use that as a springboard. If I'm understanding where you're coming from, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, what about, like, let's say, and this is something I think that most people will encounter, and I'm sure you still and deal with this at certain points, like, where it's like you got a great 4-bar loop, you got a great 8-bar loop, you got like a build and a drop or something, and you just have no idea where to go. Like, what would someone do if they have like a good core? It's like they can tell there's a good song in this 15-second file that I have. How do I turn that into a full track? Like, what's your process?
Yeah. So that's kind of like I said earlier, what I always do is I look at a specific part of my song as a jumping board to the next part. So when I'm listening to a part of my song, I'm not actually trying to like directly, like, at least at this stage where I'm at right now, I'm not trying to like directly listen to the part that I have. I'm more trying to listen to it as like a setup for my next part. So for example, when I was working on this one, I already started like chopping this break and like raising the pace over here and making like a build up there so that I can jump into a drop after that. And that's what helps me like stay out of the 8-bar loop trap, I call it, where I just always think of it like as a setup for something else. So
that makes sense.
I'm guessing the trouble comes when that's not possible, but I mean, I'm not really sure why, but I haven't been dealing with that lately. Like, I just make something and I know exactly what's supposed to come after it. It's just, I'm really not sure what that depends on.
Well,
but
I think, sorry, go ahead.
Well, if you aren't able to do that for some reason, I guess one thing that helps me is I like to look at, like, that helped me in the past. I looked at other songs and tried to, like, basically see what changes, you know, like every 4 or 8 bars or 16 bars, something is going to change, right? And then what helped me was like I always analyzed how things changed, basically. I always tried to like spot contrasts and differences and complementary sounds between different parts.
Yeah, referencing is super important. I agree with that 100%. I think a lot of people are like worried about referencing for some reason. Like, I know a lot of people who, like, they say they will never reference, or they're really against referencing because they want to craft their unique sound. And then, you know, I try to explain to them, like, well, who do you like? You know, oh, I like this person, I like that person. Like, I know for a fact that person uses reference tracks, and they're like, well, my music is so special and so unique, and I don't want to be derivative, I just want to be myself. But it's like, clearly a lot of people who make good music and original music still reference, and it's like what you just said ties directly into that. Like, there's nothing wrong with taking inspiration from the world around you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I actually have like like a small anecdote, I guess, for everybody that, I mean, it's not really an anecdote, it's just something I experienced. So I don't reference right now, but 2 years ago, all I did was reference. I wasn't even able to make tunes. I was just referencing other tunes and like replicating individual parts of it and like trying to understand how to go from A to B in my tunes. Like, that's like the other extreme, you know, like just studying other tracks, basically.
Yeah.
And from studying these tracks, like I feel like referencing and analyzing tracks is very much a skill, because you have to isolate what you're listening down to the concepts that are behind what you're hearing. So I've done a lot of that for a very long time, like just listening to people that I like and then isolating all the, like, you know, you listen to one part and then the next part and you're like, wow, these two parts work together so beautifully. So then you reduce it down to its individual instruments and you start to like understand what actually it is that makes these two parts sound so awesome. So yeah, I guess a lot of writer's block can definitely come from a lack of understanding that contrast and complementary kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, and then that ties in with this a lot, where, you know, you might not be actively referencing, but even as you were talking about this work in progress, you were like, you know, I've been listening to a lot of G. Jones and EPROM lately, and they were doing stuff with that. So you are still like passively referencing, but since you've spent enough time like really studying, and not just referencing, but like you were saying, like analyzing and studying and breaking down these other artists' works and trying to basically like inject their DNA into your process, you don't need to be as like adherent to the references as you were before, because you learned from them, and now you're kind of at a place where your ideas kind of flow on their own, and it's just a matter of like, well, what am I being inspired by lately, and how can I turn that into my own work?
Exactly. But here's like the big catch with like getting inspired. Like, this is what I think is like the difference between, you know, like when people say, oh, I don't want to reference because I don't want to like make something that someone else already made or something like that. So when I reference, quote unquote, something, like I didn't go into this project saying like, oh, I want to make a G. Jones kind of tune. I didn't say that. But what I did was I saw that G. Jones was using a lot of things that I am also familiar with, like respaces and these breaks and whatever, and complex kind of chops. So I decided I was just gonna like sit down and use respaces and chops and like various weird things and see what I organically come up with that, you know? So
Okay, for sure.
that's why I meant like people should go back to their pasts and figure out what affected them musically, because the break stuff and like the chords and whatever, these are sounds that I'm deeply familiar with. G. Jones uses them, but he's using them in a way that he's familiar with them, right? So I think that's the big thing with like being original, quote unquote. Like you can very much listen to another piece of music and pick up the same instruments and do something completely different with it, as long as you inject your identity into it. And you only know your identity if you retrace your musical steps from the past until now. So
studies. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just wrapping up. I was just saying, that is what I think.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's one of the reasons why at the very beginning I was like, well, what music did your parents listen to? What did you listen to as a kid? What did you listen to when you were growing up? Like that, like if you can go in and identify like, okay, my parents listened to Pink Floyd, I listened to a lot of Deadmau5. What is the combination of Deadmau5 meets Pink Floyd? And you kind of start to emerge on this style of music.
Yeah. Or maybe even like what's like something that happened to me was also like I listened to a lot of music, like for example this break stuff or whatever, that I listened to that when I was like a little kid. Like I would go to the video game and like instead of like playing the game, I would like turn the sound effects to 0, the music to 100, and just play that. And then my parents would be like, why are you listening to this noise? It's like, ugh, it's disgusting. And like I was like a little kid with a PlayStation just listening to this disgusting noise, So it's also like a bit of that. Like maybe, okay, let's make everything that my parents would hate and then just make a track from that. So, yeah.
I dig it. Cool. I mean, I think that's a really good kind of way to focus in on like this middle part. Like if you are struggling to know where to go next, like obviously, like you were saying, like if you can think about the loop where you're at as not its own self-contained thing, but like thinking about it in terms of like where does the end of this move into? What is the transition that comes next, even if it's something arbitrary, and then moving a little bit deeper and like, well, what is it that connects what I'm doing right now to my past, and what do those artists do? And I think that really influences the decision making that you will have when it comes to these types of changes.
Definitely.
And I get, go for it.
Another thing that happens to me is I'll be making this, and then like I can hear it in my head right now. Like for some reason, I can hear like this specific vocal from like a completely random video game that I played like 6 years ago. Like I can just hear that vocal, so I'm actually gonna go digging and like find that vocal like after the stream and like put it in there, because this is just something that happens. I feel like there's like certain associations your brain just makes involuntarily, and I'm not really sure why these associations happen, but they do. And whenever they happen, you should go and explore that path, should encourage these associations,
Oh yeah, it's all about creating like connections and finding the patterns.
Yeah. And this is very important. I feel like because the brain is like a muscle. You have to train it. Like it's not, of course, physiologically, it's not like a muscle, no. But we have like nerve paths in the brain, like neural paths, and we reinforce these neural paths with what we're doing every day. So whenever something random like that comes up in your head and you decide to pursue it, that teaches your brain that this random idea is important. So next time, your brain is probably more likely to come up with a random idea like that, and you'll be able to pursue it more easily. So whenever you feel inspired, go for it, because you'll be more likely to be inspired again.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And that we can use that as kind of a pivot point to the last little question I have, and then we'll get into the viewer Q&A, and then we will have a couple little fun topics, and then we'll get out of here.
All right.
So we've talked a little bit about like how to get over, a blank DAW, how to kind of progress past a loop, but like, let's say someone has a project that's like in this stage right here, or is in the stage close to where you were with the last track we listened to, Brightest Night, in terms of like getting it from something where this is like so close, but I just don't know what I need to finish it. Like, what suggestions or advice would you have for people who are stuck there, like they don't know how to finish a song or something?
Well, I guess what I do is I usually, like, for example, when I made one or when I made two, I would always make like a single MP3 with all the songs next to each other in one go. And then I take that, put it on a USB, put it in my car, and like I'll just go shopping and it just plays. And like I'm driving, I'm talking to people maybe, and I'm like paying attention to the road. I'm not paying attention to the music. And then because I'm not paying attention, something might strike me as odd, or I might have like an idea for how something should finish, or just that's basically what I'm saying. Like if you're stuck on a song, it's probably because maybe you're trying too hard to like complete it, or you're just listening with too much focus. It can be very beneficial to take the song, put it in a completely different context, like maybe as background music for gaming or driving or something like that. Like anything where you're not paying complete attention to the song is probably going to help you understand what you need to do to complete it.
Oh yeah, and that's mentioning specifically video games and driving. It kind of makes me think about something that I read in I want to say it was a science journal like a long time ago, like maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, where the brain kind of operates in a few different kind of wave states. Like we have alpha waves, we have theta waves, and we have delta waves, I believe. And I think it's theta waves. I could be misremembering this. So someone, if you are better at neuroscience than me and I'm saying something stupid, please correct me so that I can be better informed in the future. But it's a similar sort of mental state in both of those activities, driving and playing video games, that you see when you are taking a shower. And it's the same reason why like people are like, oh, we always have our best ideas in the shower. They are the times when our brain is kind of, it's not asleep necessarily, but it's not fully awake. Like it's not like it's trying to do something. It's allowing kind of the subconscious part of our brain to have more room to work. And so like I get some of my best musical ideas in the shower. Some of my best musical ideas come when I'm in the shower. When I'm going jogging, same sort of thing. Video games, same sort of thing. So if you are kind of trying to look for like a more rational way to approach kind of the thing that you just said, that would be the way that I would start to look at it. It's like every time you allow yourself to exist in a state where your mind is not totally locked in to like working on this problem, but that problem is still there in the back of your head, your mind is still working on it. It's just you can't really detect it until that little thought bubbles to the surface. It's like, oh, what if you add in a break right in that one section? And then bam, the whole song comes together.
Yeah. Actually, you said best ideas in the shower. I had the idea for the lead track, Go Back Home in Time, on my first album, in the shower. Like I was actually done with the studio session, and I always take, like when I'm done with the studio session, I go upstairs, I take my ice cold shower, and then I go to sleep. But then that night I had to like get out of the shower and like start writing again because I had this idea, and I was like, yeah, I need to put this in because I'll forget about this. So I did put it in, and it did become a track, and yeah, that's very useful. someone in the chat said that they usually hear good songs before they go to sleep, before they fall asleep. And yeah, lack of sleep can be very good for your inspiration. So I'm not going to encourage anybody to stay up too long, but I personally don't get enough sleep, and I know that, but it helps me really be more creative because, well, involuntarily it just happens. Like I'll be listening to a work in progress and close my eyes and be like semi-sleeping, and suddenly I have all these ideas and all these things I could add in, and then I wake up and like make it.
Yeah, well, when you're sleep deprived, your brain is also it's less able to kind of be in control of itself, so to speak. Like we have all of these conscious actions that we take, but our brain kind of has two separate things, and I like to conceptualize this in something that I call like the monkey and the alligator. I've seen a lot of different interpretations of this. Like the first one I heard, it get based off of like a Buddhist or a Hinduist kind of concept from India, where it's like you have the mahout or the rider, then you have the elephant, and I turned it into like the crocodile or the alligator and the monkey. And the monkey is riding on the back of the alligator, and he has, like, you can imagine the alligator with like some horse reins, like a bridle on, and the monkey can like control kind of what the alligator is doing, but at the end of the day, the gator is way bigger, way more powerful, and way more instinctual. So, the more exhausted the monkey gets, the longer the monkey has to work, okay, the longer you're awake, the more exhausted it gets, and the more the alligator can start to do what it wants and kind of respond to all of those little urges that we usually allow our brain to kind of suppress in order to take control. And at the same time, our brain will start to like rationalize that behavior, like the prefrontal cortex, that little thing in the very front of our brain where our foreheads are, like that is the area that controls all of that behavior that we consciously choose. All of our emotions, all of our rationalizations, all of our critical thinking happens in the prefrontal cortex. Everything else is like, this is the alligator. It's all the instinctual things like breathing and sleeping and pumping blood with our heart. Those are all signals that our brain doesn't have to think about. And every time we repeat a task enough, that starts to sink into the instinctual level, and it conserves on energy by putting it there. So when we are in a sleep-deprived state, when the monkey's really tired and the alligator can kind of do it at once, sometimes that leads to bad things like, man, I really am hungry and it's like 11 o'clock at night and I have a fridge full of deli meats and I just got a new jar of peanut butter. I'm going to go pig out. And at the same time, that same sort of instinctual behavior is where we get our pattern recognition from and where we get all of these patterns that we come up with as musicians. So looking at it kind of as something where you can control those instinctual reactions, but you can also kind of give in to those. And I think that, sleep deprivation is kind of the quick and easy way of making it happen because your brain is just less attentive. Same with drinking alcohol. But I do think it is something you can train your brain to do. If you've ever done transcendental meditation, like any sort of meditation exercises, I have found that like after a 5 or a 10-minute meditation session, like my brain is just way more primed to allow all of these things to come forth. So it's a similar sort of process, and I know that's a big tangent, but I just wanted to comment on that. I don't know if that makes sense or
I think
not.
this is all like really relevant, actually. Like, because like as I was saying earlier, you kind of have to train yourself to get to that point where you can be inspired and like just be in the zone. Basically, have those theta waves. Was it?
Theta waves.
Yeah. That's the kind of state you want to be in, like the flow state, I guess. So yeah, I feel like what also helps me is I'll be usually making very simple, like if you look at the music theory behind what I'm making, it's very simple, it's very basic, but it turns out that that's just the kind of beat where I can like close my eyes and move around and just feel good. And then like I'll be doing this instinctively. Like I'm not nodding my head because I'm like cool or whatever. I'm just like this head is moving on its own, it's moving because it's like, yeah, this is sick, and then that catapults me into a more inspired state as well. Like, that there will be days where it's like a chore to finish a track, sure, but like on the original idea, you should always have like your head should be moving, like you should be like enjoying it, and then that will help you. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's always very good.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's super true. Like all the, it's one thing to learn how to force yourself to finish a song. Like I think that is kind of a valuable skill to like learn how to separate the work of writing a song from the inspiration of writing a song. Because if you are someone who is working on any deadlines and it's like you have 2 weeks to finish a track, you can't wait for inspiration to get that song done. But at the same time, like you do want to foster a world or for yourself where the inspiration kind of comes naturally to you.
Yeah, I guess also like on the topic of deadlines and such, like you'll always be the most efficient at the things that you know and love, So if you're really aware of what it is that you love, and if you're really aware of like generally if you love a certain type of song or a certain type of melody or whatever, then you'll also know how to like make that, because you'll instinctively understand what it is you need to do to get that. So that will always help with getting something done on a deadline. You just go to the first thing that comes to mind, like the first thing that you know that you love, and then you'll get a good product usually.
Absolutely. All right, so I don't want to spend too much time waiting for these questions because I'm sure people are waiting patiently. So let's just run through these Q&A questions. If anyone else has any questions for Volant, just drop them in chat, and I'll add them to the.
I was trying to look at the chat and like try to like talk about some questions and stuff. It's just I'm just gonna say like if the chat feels ignored, then I'm sorry. I was trying to look at it, but it was actually impossible for me to like keep track of all these questions and such. So if you've asked any question during the stream and I didn't answer it or didn't see it, please ask again and I will answer it.
It's all good. But I got them copied here. So our first question is from Fearstick. At what point do you bring life to a track? How do you spice it up and bring it from only being a skeleton?
Well, I guess this is something that really depends on your perspective of a new track. So when I start a new track, I personally always hear my idea. I don't hear what's actually there. I hear the potential, I hear the feeling, I hear the idea. So even with the track I showed off today, which some people would probably agree is very bare bones and not very, polished or whatever, I listen to this and I already hear like a complete, like big full song in front of me. Like maybe that's not necessarily true, but that's just the perspective I have. So that means the life in the track for me is always there, and I'll only like start reworking or doubting it if I universally get like a response of, oh yeah, this doesn't feel like anything, or if I have someone tell me something like, this song is sick, but it would be better if it had like more oomph or more production or more high end or whatever, then I might like work that in. But generally, like no matter how quote unquote bad the sound is or how skeletal the sound is, it always sounds full and great to me. So kind of, I'm guessing bringing the life into the song is more like, that's just more something when it's like when the idea is not working yet. And I'll generally not spend a lot of time on ideas that don't work right from the start, just because, always have new ones that work better.
Oh, for sure,
I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
yeah, no, that's good. Well, however you answer it is the answer, so don't even sweat it. Our next question is from Sefring, who wants to know if you have any secret tricks you use that you can show off. I know Seth is in FL, so if you have any FL specific tricks that you want to share, that works, or any other general production tips that you think would be cool for other people to learn from.
well, secret tricks is like there are really no secrets. Like everything is pretty, nowadays you can pretty much just like find whatever you want. And I guess like most of my secrets here have just been like all these like free plugins. Like, I always look for imperfection or phaser or stuff like that. Basically, just random free plugins nobody would think of using. And I guess my biggest secret here is just like finding those things and thinking of like ways to abuse them in a way. Like imagine making a trap song, but instead of an 808, you're using a 909 or something like that, So that can be a completely like those ideas can backfire. They can be dumb, and like people can be like, "Yeah, this sucks." So like I always face a lot of like rejection with my ideas, but I guess you get a lot of courage if you do it often enough and push through and just ignore that kind of negative feedback you get from people, because sometimes an idea is like revolutionary and people just don't get it, but that's not always the case as well. So
Totally.
Yeah, I guess my secret is just finding strange things to use and using them in weird ways. Can't really narrow that down to like one specific thing, but
yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, since you have imperfection up, let's actually talk a little bit about Kamu's question. Can you elaborate on the process of downsampling? How far do you take it in a track, regardless of the original samples you use? And they were hoping to hear kind of an A and B, between a sound before downsampling and after, and just a couple of like use case scenarios and stuff like that.
Sure. Let's see if I can actually play this sound. Okay, so this sounds very thin. Was it always like that? Oh well. So this is. So the downsampling is basically like. Well, should I demonstrate it, like what downsampling is, or is that just a tangent?
That's a bit of a tangent. I think we could go into it. I don't think you need to like explain the entire process, but just sort of like just kind of demonstrating it. Yeah.
So when it's clean, we just have like this is just the clean audio with nothing on it. But when I start downsampling it like that, oops. Like you'll see, it basically makes little cuts in the audio like that. It'll notch out specific parts of the audio. And I'll have multiple ways of doing this. So I'll have imperfection here, which basically just like halves the sample rate, quarters it, or eighths it. I'm not sure how to, say that in English, but like it's like a quarter or an eighth of the original sample rate. So depending on what I need, I'll do different levels of like reduction. So for example, over here on the drum breaks, which, I've downsampled them. Like I could actually show that off here. So I've got this drum break. Oh yeah, because I disabled everything. Whoops. All right. So cool break. So now if I add imperfection, it does nothing because I disabled it.
And you can hear the
kind
notch.
of adds like a consistent high-end sheen here to the sound. Like, see, like this frequency here is always going to be emphasized, because what's happening is it's reducing the sample rate, so we can actually not replicate anything above 11.05. It's like the sound technically ends here, But then because there's no filter on this, it's actually mirroring it upwards here. And that actually gives it a little metallic kind of texture, yeah. And I'm actually chasing down these metallic textures because now if I have a different drum break here, like this one, like they actually have a similar kind of downsampling going on. So now these will be a little more consistent with each other, especially with the other processing. So
it kind of glues all of the breaks together.
Exactly. But you always have to adjust them in post. Like I didn't resample all of these through the same chain. I like kept tweaking this chain and then I got like that. Wait, that's always so tricky with all these mutings and whatever. So had that, and then I had like this one. Oops. These are chopped, so they're pretty hard to preview. So yeah, all of these have like a similar kind of high-end thing going on. Mm-hmm. So another way I will use this is like I will, for example, I'll take one synth and I'll half the sample rate on it, and then on another one I'll quarter it, or I'll just leave it untouched. And then depending on how I set this up, it's going to give each sound like a different depth, sort of. Like you might have heard of like depth mixing, where you change the amount of high end in a song, and the more high end you have, the closer it seems. The less high end you have, the further away it seems. So I'll be using this to like, you know, create a bit of a depth thing. Like I got the song called Contact. Like maybe I should pull it up in here, but I don't know if that's like,
I think it's all right. I don't think.
Okay, wait, that's the wrong folder. Finals Contact. Okay, so just gonna play like a small part of it because, yeah. So. So one thing you'll actually notice is that every single sound you've just heard is actually recorded at a sample rate of 11.025. So nothing here has like any high end. But then, wait. Then these cymbals come in. So like what I did was every single element here is recorded with a quarter of the sample rate, right? But then the hi-hats have half a sample rate, right? And then yet other sounds have like the full sample rate. So that's one creative way to use downsampling. You can like create a bit of a depth in there because your ear will attach to the different downsampled high ends and separate them in a way.
For sure. That's really clever. It's like, it's the same thing as like, you know, instead of just using like shelf filters and high passes and low passes, like you're sculpting it with effects.
Yeah. And of course, got a freaking free plugin for that, but I'm not actually sure how to find this on the internet anymore. It's called Sample Reducer. It might be easy to find or maybe not. But yeah, this has different modes. Some of them are more transparent, some of them are less transparent, so you might even be able to use the same frequency but different modes to separate them. So on this one, I think I used it on the drum loops here. Yeah. So this is with it, and this is without. Okay. So that just helps lose some definition in the high end.
This kind of blurs the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to talk about for downsampling, or I think that's a good amount?
Yes, I think that's it. Yeah.
Awesome.
I could talk about these things forever. You know,
No,
I'm very in love with all these concepts.
Yeah. No, I feel you. And I mean, we've gone for 3.5 hours already, so this is going to be a long cast for sure. So from Ryan, he's curious, Rianu, they're wondering, like, how about making kicks? Like, do you usually start from scratch, or do you like to make things using like Serum or using Harmor? And then how do you process it to make it more your own? And Ryan, we did go into that a little bit for the first song. We talked a lot about the layering and the processing of his drums and his different chains and routings for it. But if you want to go kind of a little bit more on like a kick drum 101 kind of thing, that might be fine. We don't have to go too deep.
Sure. So I actually I collected a bunch of, like, I just went through all of my drum machine packs and just collected a bunch of drum machine kicks that I like. So your average kind of kick drums. So yeah, and usually it depends on what kind of song I'm trying to start. So in this case, for example, I just needed like, I guess from the breaks I got like this, wait, there's like this little kick in there, you know? It's a very tonal kick, so I decided to layer it with a longer low kick with reverb. But yeah, so that's just for this kind of tune where I know that I don't need like a consistent kick. I've also got like this kick I made from a sample pack that released last weekend. So got that one. But yeah, it just depends on the kind of song I'm trying to make. So like if I know that I have like lots of offbeat kind of kicks, then I'll use like a short kind of kick. But if I know that I have to like in Brightest Night, for example, I know that I'll have to have like, you know, a long kind of kick because I have like a very simple rhythm at the start. So it'll be like. So for that, I usually use Harmor or Serum or whatever to generate like a low end, like a little.
Almost like a sub.
Exactly. A low, long subtone. Like this is the exact sample I used in the other song for the low end. And this is just like a generated sine wave. See if I can pull it up here. Yeah. But the high end from this is actually just, I think it's a 707. Let me see. Well, I mean, we're not going to find the exact sample right now because, I mean, I think it's this one actually, so pitched up a little. But then also compression and all of that. So whatever. The point is, you can usually, because like if you notice, this kick has like a very big sort of gap here, right? So what I'll actually do is I'll generate a low sine wave down here, like that. Like this is what I'm just generating. That's the generated part down there. And then I'll just high pass a click and put that on top. And then those two things just merge because the brain kind of fills in the gaps here.
Yeah, we hear the missing information, even though it's not there.
Exactly. And then to strengthen that a little bit, you can like saturate it or compress it or anything you want, basically. Like two separated kind of layers can like come together from the distortion because the distortion will mask any kind of separation between those two things. But yeah, of course, that process, you can also like layer a bunch of different samples. Like, for example, this is like my house kick that I use in every house song. And this was actually made from like these individual samples, right?
Oh, and you just layered and processed them, basically.
Like these don't sound very good together, but then you can just like tweak them, move them left, move them right, EQ them, layer them, copy them, even like put a synthetic layer in there, or like, you know, anything you want, basically. So it's just like a process of like messing around, like trying to figure out what your song needs and then choosing the right way to do it. It's like in this case, layering a couple things just worked out. In other cases, you have to synthesize a clean, long, low end.
Yeah, very much depends on the track.
It's just yeah.
What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just gonna say like yeah, that's basically you just need to be very situational and like very focused on what the mood is, and then you'll have like a method.
Okay, for sure. Hopefully that helps, Ryan. Thanks for the question. Up next, we have our first question from Fand. Is it Fand or Fend? What's the four supposed to be? I'm assuming it's an A. And they're asking, what's the weirdest sample you have in your library? The most weird samples you have, and they're saying they know you have the Gotchi sample pack, so that doesn't count. The Gotchi sample pack doesn't count, but you should show that off anyways.
I have from Trendsetter 2, which is the pack we released. I got this. I don't know how you could use that.
Oh, I could think of it. I mean, that's just techno. Like you put that on like the second 16th note of the first quarter note in the bar, and then you put the other one on like the last upbeat, and then you just have a 4-4 kick drum. Oh yeah, that's how I'd use it. Also, where can I get this sample pack? Can you send me that?
Oh, it's kind of hard. If I think it's Bab is in the chat, so like it's Bab. He's like one of the people that worked on the sample pack. Maybe he can link it. I'm not sure. Sean, are you there?
It's either way. If not, it's not a huge deal.
I think Sean's gonna link it in a second. But yeah, that's the pack.
Show Spaff Odd Perk 7.
Perk 7? What?
Spaff,
the right one?
SPAF.
I'm not sure. Oh, SPAF. Whoops. Let's go down here. So like we released the sample pack like ages ago. Listen, SPAF squat pack. Yeah, there it is. So
there we go.
Perk Odd 7. Here we go.
Oh my god.
All right. I've got this is like a good pack that I have, but it's not exactly weird. It's just yeah.
All right.
And
Beans. Bruh. Cook that breakfast. Hey, I'm a dumbass.
yeah, these are fantastic.
Those are amazing.
I think I also have like these are like
anime.
I collected these from like a modular. Let me see what.
Wait, no anime. Pack 18.
Oh no.
What's an anime?
Really?
You have to show us.
Really? Okay, so these are like. Oh, I made these.
Nice. Pretty cool.
These are some annoying sounds, but there's like just.
I need this sample pack.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure if this is royalty free or not, but basically I was looking for this sound and couldn't find it in there.
You made it.
So that's why that's there.
Nice. All right, I think that's a good view. Unless there's like any other samples you want to show off, but I think we can
just these because they're very.
These are some good ass sounds, dude. Hell yeah. Did you make those or
actually use these?
Did you make those?
No, these are just recorded from like a modular synth. But like these are just really strange sounds, and I've used these in my song Golden Age as well. Just another deep dive into my weird sound collection, I guess.
Nice, I dig it. I mean, that's the one thing. It's like I was saying before with DJs. Like we're crate diving. Producers crate dive for samples. DJs crate dive for records. Same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess the next question we have is from Anxiety DMB. What are some of your favorite video game OSTs? What game soundtracks do you like?
Wow. I don't know. Smash Brothers Melee, Ridge Racer Type 4, Gran Turismo 1 American version, Gran Turismo 4. I don't really listen to so many OSTs, I guess. Let me think.
I mean, it sounds like you're listening to a lot of racing games. Do you like racing games?
Yeah, I grew up playing racing games a lot because I didn't really have anything else, so I just always played race. Even like today, I'm still speedrunning like different tracks on racing games all the time, just because like that's my life. Like I'm just a racing driver kind of person, just how I am.
Nice, I feel it.
I'd say the biggest influence musically out of all of these is probably Ridge Racer 4. I almost said the wrong game, but because like they wrote like this they used a lot of break samples and they used a lot of like jazzy kind of funky elements like slap bass and piano and Rhodes and whatever. So that's kind of how my song Pro Blue Soul happened as well, because I was just listening to these things all the time, like my entire life. And then I decided, okay, maybe it's time to make a track like that. But one thing I also do is I always export the menu sounds from my PlayStation games. So like this is Gran Turismo 1. Like they used to have like small break chops in there, and then they would arrange the music out of these chops, and they would use like these small synth sounds.
Yeah.
And these are, I haven't really sampled these, but they're like sound design inspirations for me. I've also exported Gran Turismo 2 and what else? Well, yeah, whatever. So the point is, all of these PlayStation 1 soundtracks really inspire me.
Nice. Well, there we go. I mean, that's a good reference point. Maybe not tracks that you are super inspired by, but things that like inspired you to be inspired, so to speak. Cool. Next question we have is from Borticle. Do you ever plan on collaborating with Prismatic again? Do you two still keep in touch?
So I try to keep in touch with everybody, and I've actually been talking a lot to Fractal, and I've been hanging out, like, not much, but like we've been talking about music now and then, AU5 and I. But Prismatic, I've kind of drifted out of touch with them, but I don't think for any particular reason we just haven't talked. Like, I could probably just write him a DM and we'll talk, you know? It's just, I think we both genuinely just forgot about talking to each other. It's just how it is.
This happens.
Last time we talked was like 3 years ago. But I mean, about collaborating, he's got a really, like, I've been following his music. He's got like some really sick rhythm. So if you're into dubstep and that kind of stuff, you probably want to check that out. He does like really consistently good bass music now. And I mean, I would work with him, but I don't think I really fit into that stylistically. But I do like his work a lot. I respect that a lot.
Nice, for sure. And then I guess another question from Fand. What about vocals? In the last 2 albums, there were no tracks with vocals, and the only stuff you've released with vocals are remixes. Can we expect tracks with vocals, or are they not fitting in with your current concept for the projects you're working on?
So this is there's a personal reason for why I don't use vocals, and it's basically that I grew up listening to almost exclusively instrumental music, and contrary to what it seems from me, like speaking on the stream and whatever, I'm not very good at like English, in the sense that when I hear an English song, I don't understand what's being said, and I don't understand why that is. I don't know. I guess my brain just can't keep up with the music and the vocals or something, and then I just choose to focus on the music instead of the vocals. But historically, whenever I produce the vocal song, it's come out not as good as I want it to be, but I guess it's just because I'm that kind of person. Like I don't really know how to do vocals. if I do vocals, I'll probably put them more like in the semi-background kind of thing, like maybe really reverbed out, like Tame Impala kind of vocals. That's kind of what I'm into. So
I get that.
yeah, I
The
also
vocal are the
struggle to
focus.
like write meaning into my vocals. Like I've written some vocals, but it always feels like meaningless and weird because, well, I guess I'm not very good with words. You know, I'm just
well,
not.
why else would you be a musician, right? Why else would you make, tracks rather than just say things?
Yeah. But you know, everything's like a skill that has to be understood and learned. So I think I can probably try to go more into a vocal direction at some point. I'll just have to really believe in it, and I guess so far I haven't had the courage to do that. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
Totally.
We'll definitely get there.
All right, so we got a trio of questions from Rindom. First, what's the last idea that you had that was revolutionary that other people didn't understand or didn't get?
I guess now it's getting a little cringeworthy for me because, like I said, revolutionary. I'm not, I don't think my ideas are necessarily like revolutionary. But what I'm trying to say, what I tried to say with that was more like sometimes you may have an idea that you personally really like, but nobody understands it. So, let me see. There was one idea that I clearly remember being very hated, but I pushed through anyway. I don't remember exactly which one that was on this one, but I remember one from the previous album. So if I go over here, yes, there it is. So we had this, I made a song with AV, and well, it sounds like this. So I'll just play like a little bit of it. So. And then there's this part over here. And then it goes into like... And then that goes into... So as you can tell, it's like a lot of different parts, and I was told like by everybody, oh dude, you gotta like focus on one of these. You can't just put like all of these random small whips next to each other in one track. That doesn't sound good. And I was like, well, actually, what if I do it anyway and just don't care? And then I did that, and it ended up being like the favorite track for a bunch of people, just because like there were so many like small weird sounds that they could like focus on for a millisecond. So revolutionary or not, up to you to decide. But what I meant was like sometimes nobody believes in an idea but yourself, and that's exactly why you should do it.
Awesome.
You gotta have the courage to say like, okay, I don't care if nobody likes this, I just want to do this.
Yeah, trust in yourself.
Yeah.
I dig that. Well, we talked about this a little bit already, but what sort of reference tracks are you drawn to? Because I know you said you haven't been referencing a lot lately, but you had a whole period where you were breaking down a lot of artists and studying them very closely.
Yeah. So one of the guys I paid a lot of attention to was, there's this guy called Pomrad, and he makes very like his music is very jazzy and very complicated, like writing wise and such, and he uses a lot of really like fast and action-packed kind of arrangements, whereas like my music is always very like repetitive and there's not too much crazy stuff happening. So I listened to his stuff and was like, okay, how does he actually make so much crazy stuff but somehow have like a consistent song? So I would just like sit down and try to figure out how long something is looping and when something's coming in and when something's like leaving again. So I would actually sit down and write like huge lists of like, okay, 1 minute to 1 minute 30, this sound is playing, like now it cuts out. Like I would actually write like a list of things that are happening in the song just so like I can digest it and like kind of build up a visual version of what the project could actually look like. So I spent a lot of time analyzing Pomrad's music for that reason.
Definitely. I mean, kind of on that note, like, have you ever, like, I've linked this video before on my stream. I don't know if you've seen it. Like, it's this step one thing. It's like a short little 2-minute video, and it just talks about like, kind of doing what you were talking about doing with like a pencil and a piece of paper, but like inside your DAW with like empty MIDI clips or empty pattern clips. Kind of like you pull the song in, you put out the arrangements, and then you're like putting in empty clips for every sound, so you can kind of see when things are entering and seeing when things are leaving. Have you ever done anything like that?
Oh, definitely. That's a very smart way of doing it. I actually wanted to do that, but I never did it. So I'm guessing, yeah, if you plan to do that, then maybe you should do it that way, just for visual clarity. I guess I do a little bit better with lists for some reason.
Yeah, your brain
Like,
accesses the information a little bit better.
yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I'm just a lists person. It's kind of strange, but
I get you.
yeah,
I get you.
but definitely a smarter way to do that.
Yeah, well, and then the last question is, do you ever sample tracks, or do you just buy or collect sample packs and go from there?
So I never really like I don't purchase many sample packs. I more just go hunting. And I don't mean like I don't pirate any sample packs, no, but I just like go hunt for free packs, or I'll find like a random index on the internet that has a bunch of samples on them. So I mean, I don't know about the legality of these indexes, but they're usually just like random drum machine samples that some dude recorded like 20 years ago. So but that's kind of what I collect. Like some of these things are not even available to be purchased anymore. Like that's how old the sample packs are. You just cannot purchase them. So I'll find them in a random index and get them from there. But yeah, that's kind of, I never sample tracks. I never sample like I'll never buy a sample pack. I'll always just look for random obscure stuff on the internet, and then I'll use that.
Oh, for sure. I get that. I mean, it's a similar sort of thing to sampling, but just like instead of fighting through like, oh, I heard this one sound in this one song and I thought it will be really cool for my track, so I just cut it from that track. But it's like I have all these sounds that I found, and they're just from like random places, and like that one sound from that one pack that I downloaded like 4 years ago is going to be perfect for this. Stuff like that.
Yeah. I have like a lead melody in Contact at the end of the first drop, which kind of does like a Phrygian dominant kind of thing, I think. And well, that one, the patch is actually just something I found in an index and then decided to, use on top of like the drop, like last minute. Like I literally decided to do that like couple, like 20 minutes before I exported the final version. I just did that real quick because it felt good. So having that just laying around somewhere in these folders over there is like gold, and I haven't found it yet. So
I dig that.
It's always good.
Nice, nice. All right. One last question from Arthur. Do you ever have random ideas at inopportune times, and you have to scramble to figure out how to save that idea so you don't forget it?
Well, yeah, that used to be a thing for me, and then I would always pull out my phone and like whistle the melody, or sing it, or write down the chords or something like that. But lately that hasn't been happening as much because I'm doing music full time at the moment, so I just spend a lot of time like actually writing and thinking of things. And like one time I had an idea in the bus like 2 or 3 days ago. And actually, that idea was so strong to me that it stuck with me for 1 or 2 days. And yesterday, I actually ended up writing the idea out. Just I never forgot it because it was so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because I'm doing this stuff full time, it's like my brain usually isn't musical unless I'm actually like in the studio and working. Like all of the times, I'm not actually like thinking musically, just because like my brain wants a break.
Yeah. It's actually funny you mentioned that, because I encountered a similar thing when I started focusing on music as a full-time thing, and even to a lesser extent like education. Like I love streaming, but at the same time streaming does make it so that when I'm not streaming, the last thing I want to do is think about music.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, it's the part of making it your job.
Exactly. That's why, I mean, I have a stream schedule, but what happened was I was streaming once a week for about 5 months or so, and then I just had to like stop for a while just because it was either like grinding music or streaming, and I was just like, okay, if I want to finish an album, I'll stop streaming and just grind it out, and then I'll get back to streaming. So, you know,
Oh yeah.
your brain is just kind of overloaded at one point, and it just becomes like a game of like stacking patterns and pressing notes instead of like music. Like that's kind of how it feels to me.
I get that. No, I get that. Well, it looks like we're all out of questions. That's not me asking for more, so please don't ask anymore if you're in chat. But let's have a little bit of fun at the very end here before we take off. So here's the DAW Wars question. What do you think about DAWs besides FL Studio? Do you ever use other DAWs, or have you ever used multiple DAWs for a single project, like maybe a collaboration or something? What's your opinion on the scope of audio production suites that we have on the internet nowadays?
Yeah, so I think personally I use pretty much only FL Studio. I had a time where I was using Cubase for a lot of things just because, well, I think it was Tristam, he told me, yeah, Cubase is the best, you gotta use Cubase. So I used Cubase for a while and I loved it. And then like I stopped making music for a while, and then I just went back to FL Studio and it was natural. So, you know, I don't really think too much about what I'm using. If I'm using Ableton or Cubase or FL, it always feels like the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of people relate to me on that, but to me, it's just like the interface is gone. Like it's just my brain directly plugged into the music. There's like no, like I don't see what I'm doing. It's just I'm like in there. You know, I'm like I live in there. It's weird, but
no, I get that.
Yeah, so I've used Ableton on both albums. Interloper is partially Ableton, and Godwave is partially Ableton. I find that for recording, FL Studio is probably the worst, but I don't record much, so it doesn't affect me. Mm-hmm. For quickly arranging like house and trap and whatever, that kind of music, FL Studio is probably the best, because in Ableton, it would take me a long time to, you know, build a proper cool drum groove, while in FL I'll be done after like 3 or 4 minutes or 5 minutes maybe, if I got my source sounds correct. Mm-hmm. So it might be a question of training or habit or whatever, but FL for me is the quickest on that front.
For sure.
And also mixer routing in FL is like insane. I've heard like I'm trying to like I spent some time trying to convince Shroom that Ableton is better than FL actually. But he keeps telling me that the mixer in FL is like so much better and so much more insane. So like there's plenty of points to back that up, I guess. But personally, I like the FL mixer. I also like Ableton, but yeah,
I get you.
I guess FL has like more routing options. But then there's
FL also has,
it's insane.
Yeah, but FL also only has, what is it, like 11 mixer inserts, unless you use patcher or multi-effect chain routing.
Huh?
Well, isn't there a limit to how many VSTs you can put on a channel?
Well, you got 99 channels, 98, 99, yeah.
Yeah, but like each one only has, it looks like only 8 effects on each one.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's what you mean. Yeah, you can only put 8 effects on it, but with Patcher, you can create like an endless chain of things, but
sure,
that's cheating, so...
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I guess, you know, that this gets back to kind of what you were saying. Like, it doesn't really matter which DAW it is. It's like, if you can interface with it naturally.
Yeah, I think Ableton is better at long effects chains, though, I'll be fair, you know?
Oh yeah, everyone has their own thing, but I mean, like, you're not making music that needs long effects chains, and when you do have them, you just have a patcher.
Exactly. And well, or also you could like take insert 17 here and like route it to 18, and then you got 16 inserts, like, you know, it goes over there now. That's something I do a lot for my drums. Like my drums will have like a lot of different tracks, and then maybe I'll run out of tracks, so I'll like route into the next one. But yeah, that's kind of unnatural. It would be better to just have infinite slots here, I guess.
Oh yeah, I mean, it maybe in FL 21.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, are there any other last minute like tips, techniques, words of advice? Is there anything else in the future that you want to promote? Anything like that? Now's your chance to do all your plugs and shit like that.
Sure. So I want to plug the sample pack, but I'm gonna have to pull up like a link I hope there's nothing weird open on my computer.
I mean, we can't see it anyways.
Thing.
Remember, we only see the gray lines.
Oh, no. I almost closed the Zoom call now because I'm dumb.
Ooh.
I have to go to my SoundCloud to find this link because we reposted it. Okay, so I'll send that to you on Discord, I guess, because I don't have access to the stream chat from this computer. But yeah, so we released the sample pack, and it's completely free. Everybody can download it, and you can just use these samples. These are samples that we built. There's like a glitch. There's our samples we built over the course of the past month or so, and we plan to release a lot of samples and sample packs over the next year or so. Like, we'll have a new one out every month or so. And we made a Discord, and to get the sample pack, you just have to join the Discord, find the Trendsetter 2 channel in there, and download it. And we would appreciate if you stuck around in the Discord to get future free packs. And, well, we're also going to be selling a bunch of packs, but we will always keep a very low price point because, unlike the bigger companies, we want to make small packs that people are interested in and can actually afford. So, you know, we're really trying to do something for the people here. So.
Yeah, you don't need to be like, hey, it's person from company. Are you ready to up your game and become the best producer? Pay us $400 for this limited edition sample pack that has the same 20 kicks we've used in every sample pack since we started. Excuse me, sorry. Sorry, got a bit of a bug stuck in my throat there.
Oh, that's great. Oh, yeah. But yeah, we're trying to do the opposite of that. We're trying to just, you know, connect with the people. And like, let's say people all want like a specific pack, and you know, they can tell us, and we'll probably work on that pack and like make these samples happen, you know. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for some really nice interaction. And yeah, we'll be also giving these out to, you know, Twitch streamers for free, so that, you know, in exchange for shout outs, maybe, who knows.
Awesome. Yeah,
So,
for sure. Cool. Anything else, or I think we're good, or?
oh yeah, I mean, I guess I also do like feedback streams on my Twitch, so if you want to check me out, sure.
There you go. Shout out to Volant Music. Everyone go follow Volant if you aren't already. Cool. Well, I think that about does it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Hey, I wanna say thank you so much for doing this. I know we started off with a little bit of technical difficulties, but we figured it out, and I think people enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude, it was awesome. Thank you very much for being patient with me, and, you know, having me, and, you know, putting up with my bad, you know, presentation here and whatever. But yeah,
not bad at all.
Thank you very much. It's really awesome.
Oh yeah, everyone say thank you, Volant, in chat, please. Please, thank you. Say thank you.
Yeah, I hope people could take something useful and like learn something from it. And yeah, that's all I care about, is like motivating people, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I think I am going to let you go and then wrap this up.
Oh.
Awesome. You can just hop out whenever. I'm just gonna clean up stuff on my end.
All right, sure. Well, I'll say peace out to the chat, and well, maybe we can hang out afterwards or something like that. Yeah.
Sounds great. All right. Bye.
See ya.
Okay, awesome. Thank you again, Volant. That was sick. That was super fun. I really, really dig it. Thank you to everyone who stuck around. If you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Please go check out Volant's album. I'll have a link to his new album in the description below. And this is going to be where I cut the YouTube video.